Another one of those heavy silences. Oh.
Katie starts. Oh, yes, Katie starts. Okay, Katie, we're live.
All right, welcome everybody. It is 5/17/2023, and I believe 6 o'clock your time, 7 o'clock where I'm at, and I will call the Lincoln County Budget Committee meeting to order. My understanding is we did have a brief change in the agenda tonight, and before we get to our normal Budget Committee business, we do actually need to have the Board of Commissioners discuss and take a vote on reappointing our committee for the elected, what is it called? Elected Persons Salary Review Committee or something like that. So we do need to stop and have the commissioners take a vote on that. I think everyone will have received the information from Kathleen Kelly about what needs to happen. Is there questions from commissioners on that?
I have none.
I have none.
Okay, so can I get a motion to appoint our compensation board committee members?
Madam Chair, we appreciate that we appoint the three designated compensation committee members for 2023.
And I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, none opposed, that motion carries. And now I will turn it back over to actually our budget committee meeting chair to help us go through the rest of our agenda tonight. So over to you, Susan.
Thank you, Commissioner. So the first item after the called order and elections is the Compensation Committee recommendations. Is someone representing or talking to us about that? It's there.
Thank you.
I think that's David, perhaps.
I don't see a David.
David's not.
Yeah.
Moral support office.
Oh, he's online.
Oh, he's
He's
online.
online.
Okay, he is here. My apologies.
So you have two of the three that are part of the committee. I'm Joy Good-Connect. I'm the HR director at Oregon Coast Community College. I'm Tiana DeVries. I'm the HR director for Lincoln County School District. So our third person could not be here. They're in fact attending a board meeting of their own. So we did get together and take a look at the elected officials situation. We reviewed the documentation, and I believe you've got a copy of the document that makes the recommendations that we have. If you want me to go through them or if you have questions, not sure how you want to move forward.
Thank you. And I have no questions at this time. Does anyone else?
I do not.
Any other board members? I guess we are without questions.
Well, fantastic. This is like the easiest thing.
Thank you.
We still have time to go get to the next board.
That's right.
Well, I want to thank you for allowing us to be able to have this opportunity to take a look at these things and provide our feedback. So thank you very much. We appreciate it.
And thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Appreciate it. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay, so at this point, we're going to open up the public hearing for the general Lincoln County budget.
Question, Madam Chair, I believe, do we need to act at this point to
On the
adopt
recommendation.
or the recommendation? Yeah. Yeah, I believe so.
Okay,
Pardon me? Oh, okay. Yeah, so premature at this point. Thank you.
so.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jane Welch. I'm your Lincoln County Treasurer Tax Collector. And Ken, if you'd like to start the presentation. Slide. The treasurer is an elected position that upholds commitment to deliver service with competence, high standards for all of Lincoln County. This position has a fiduciary responsibility for safekeeping local government monies and investments. The treasurer is responsible for maintaining accurate records, protecting and securing investments of public funds in accordance with Oregon statutes and the guidelines of Lincoln County investment policy. We also deposit and monitor county room tax revenues for the unincorporated area of Lincoln County. The treasurer is also appointed by the Board of Commissioners as tax collector. Next slide. Staff of the treasurer's office consists of myself, the treasurer, chief deputy Amy, and accounting clerk Danelle. The treasurer's office receipts and deposits all of the funds collected by other departments as well as federal and state agencies. This office funds operations for other departments such as accounts payable, county excise tax, county insurance, and payroll. We reconcile monthly statements and process interest allocations to departments and taxing districts. Next slide. Revenue sources come primarily from property tax collections and transient lodging tax from the unincorporated areas of Lincoln County. Next slide. Monthly, we distribute property tax collections to the local taxing districts, which include cities, schools, hospitals, fire districts, road and water districts, fire departments, excuse me, and many other services within Lincoln County. As you can see, the bulk of our collections happen second quarter when tax statements are sent out. Next slide. Quarterly, we collect transient room tax payments. In the first 3 quarters of the 2022-23 fiscal year, we have already collected over $3.7 million. These monies help to fund the aquarium, fair, economic development projects in the unincorporated areas of Lincoln County and our general fund. We also distribute funds received quarterly from state and federal agencies for timber harvesting. In the first 3 quarters of 22-23 fiscal year, we have distributed approximately $744,000. The timber harvest program helps to fund the animal shelter, schools, extension, county transportation, library, port, and general fund. This graph represents revenue from the treasurer's office. As you can see, we have not had figures since fiscal year of 2019-20. This is due to a procedure change in how revenue is tracked by the finance department, but we wanted to give you a general idea of tax revenue. Expenses. This graph represents expenses for the treasurer's office. As you can see, we lean towards the frugal approach. Over the past 5 years, our expense budget has increased only $63,850. Forecasting for the upcoming fiscal year, 84.7% of the expenses for the treasurer's office will come from personnel costs, with only 15.3% attributed to materials. Materials costs include not only include office supplies, but also funds for travel and professional development. It is my goal to have a highly trained and motivated staff that can assist both the public and county personnel in an efficient and competent manner. One of the accomplishments for my office that occurred this year was the successful transition of county banks to Umpqua Bank. As you know, Columbia and Umpqua Bank recently merged. However, our local branch, Columbia Bank, where most of the county's banking was handled, was acquired by First Security of Washington. As treasurer, I have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure county funds are safe and secure. As a result of all the banking movement, Umpqua is now our primary banking institution. With these financial transitions, the responsibility of certifying the banking regulations and fund transactions became a huge undertaking. After dozens of hours of intense work for many months, I'm happy to say that we are finally nearing the end of our journey in this complex endeavor. At this time, I would like to take a moment to thank our local bank branches, treasury management, and all their hard work and assistance during this change. I would also like to thank all of those involved in the county on a county level who participated in this project. When looking to the future, I have several goals and objectives. These include the continued safekeeping of our local government monies, fostering good relationships with our local banks, investment institutions, including interdepartment and outside agencies, and continuing to provide a high level of professional customer service to all departments, entities, and auditors. Oops. As we near the end of this budget presentation, I think it's important to recognize the staff in the tax office and the treasurer's office for their outstanding work and commitment to Lincoln County. Together, we get our important work done accurately, efficiently, and professionally. Questions?
I don't have any.
Question?
I do not at this time.
So, again, questions.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you for your work.
Actually, I do have a question.
Oh,
Okay.
From your side. Two things. One comment is, I know that this is a little bit new of a budget process for us and having every department come and present, but I'm really thankful you did, Jane. Thank you, and Amy as well. This is just like the most critical role I think that counties play is the treasurer's office, and it's often something we don't talk about. And whenever I hear from cities or others, what is the county doing for cities? They don't do anything. This is just a super critical function that, like you said, our hospitals, our school district, our special districts, our ports, et cetera, this is how they get their funding if they have taxpayer funding. So it's not just a critical function for Lincoln County, the government organization, but a really critical function for kind of like all governments and special districts in the county. So I'm just thankful that you were able to be here and talk about that a little bit, because I think it's not something that a lot of people understand. Second, an actual question. In your material and services budget, I think it was like about $44,000 or something like that. And you said that is mostly training and office supplies. Where's your money, or in what budget does your money sit for actually mailing out of property taxes? Is that from that materials and supplies, or is that out of the tax
It is.
collector side?
It's actually out of both, and Amy is going to touch on that.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
We have a surprise second.
Oh, I
presentation.
do.
Well, that's what I thought. I wasn't trying to get ahead of
We
myself.
do have a surprise second
It was, okay.
presentation.
Madam Chair, I didn't have any questions, but I just did have a comment. Thank you to you and Administrator Johnson for getting through this bank transition.
Thank you. You're
It was a
welcome.
very heavy lift, and I
was.
know there's still more to be done, but
We're almost there.
yeah, that was
it's all
quite a
good.
surprise.
Yep.
Appreciate that. All right, thank you.
I have the.
You do.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Amy Bendel. I'm the Chief Deputy for the Property Tax Department and the Treasurer's Office, and I will be presenting for the Tax Department this evening. So the Property Tax Department, oh boy. It was backwards.
Is your camera in here?
Okay. Next slide, please. The Property Tax Department is responsible for the billing and collecting of all of the property taxes for Lincoln County. Every year in October, we send out approximately 47,000 tax statements, which serve as bills for the upcoming tax year or for the new tax year. Because statute provides that taxes paid in full by the due date of November 15th will receive a 3% discount, the bulk of the taxes we collect will be paid by the due date in November. For the current tax year, approximately 89% was collected by November 15th. In addition to sending the annual tax statements, the tax department also generates and mails trimester statements and delinquency notices. Next slide, please. We process foreclosures on properties that are 4 years behind in taxes, provide refunds to taxpayers on accounts that are overpaid or double paid. We monitor accounts with active bankruptcies, and we process BOPTA refunds, BOPTA being the Board of Property Tax Appeals. This department staff consists of the appointed tax collector, who's also the elected treasurer, Jane, the chief deputy, and 2 full-time employees. But during our busy tax season in October and November, we bring in 2 seasonal employees to assist in processing the high volume of payments. Our seasonal helpers are both retired employees of Lincoln County, one that worked for HHS for over 20 years and one that worked for the tax department for over 30 years. We are incredibly fortunate to have personnel with such experience available to us. It seems like you might know one of them. While personnel services make up the bulk of the tax department's expenses, material costs can contain big ticket items such as contractual services and postage. Postage costs alone for the 23-24 budget are forecasted at $35,000. Revenue sources come primarily from property tax collections with a very tiny portion received from service charges. Although the property tax department performs many services, our main function is to bill and collect the property taxes. As of April 30th of this year, our collection percentage for the current tax year stands at 95.63%. Historically, by June 30th of each year, collection averages 97.25%, and we expect to surpass that this year. We are in the middle of a billing right now and have another one coming up. The revenue that we collect is turned over monthly to the treasurer's office to be distributed to the general fund and the local taxing districts. Now for the fun stuff. Let's talk about some of our recent achievements. One very exciting upgrade the tax department has made recently is the unveiling of our new taxing software in June of 2022. This was a multi-year implementation project that we worked on in conjunction with the assessor's office. And switching from an AS400 DOS-based program, affectionately termed green screen by those of us, by those of us who are longtime users, to a now web-based program proved challenging. However, we are now coming up to our 1-year anniversary of our go live, and I think that we would all confirm that all the hard work and effort was worth it. With our new tax software came new options such as public access. The public can now access their tax accounts 24/7 and see real-time information. Whether it's researching property details, obtaining a tax statement, seeing the payment history on an account, everything can now be done from any computer or mobile device with internet access. With our taxpayers not just living in Lincoln County, but many residing internationally, this has been an extremely convenient upgrade for everyone. You'll like this next one. Another advancement made by the property tax department in recent years is the expansion of payment options. We now offer online payment via debit and credit card or electronic check. The online payment portal can be accessed through a button on the new county homepage. For anyone not wanting to access the service for themselves, tax department staff will process debit and credit card payments via phone for our taxpayers. Many taxpayers choose electronic forms of payment to avoid both the delay of snail mail and the inconvenience of making a trip to the courthouse. In the last 4 years, we've seen more than a 200% increase in electronic payments methods being used. And now nearly 10% of our collections come in via an electronic payment type. For those that prefer not to use electronic payment types, we do still accept payment in person for both cash and check. In fact, the bulk of our payments still received our cash or check. We also have 2 secure drop boxes, one in the parking lot next to the elections drop box and one just outside our office where payments can be placed for collection. Of course, snail mail is still an option. The tax department plays a vital role in ensuring that the cities, schools, hospitals, fire departments, and many other services in Lincoln County receive their funding. Our goal is to provide the public with excellent, friendly, and respectful services, and we pride ourselves on meeting this goal each and every day. Are there any questions?
It's like, that's a huge job.
Well, Madam
Yeah.
Chair, curious, how has that freed you up in terms of, I mean, because that was the, paying taxes, what's my current bill? I mean, that was the #1 call even we would receive down here and direct them to you. How's that freed you up?
It's been amazing. Our phone communication with the outside, with the public is just dropped huge. hugely. So that frees up a little bit of our time to do extra projects such as the, excuse me, the implementation of a new tax software and other projects that we have. But yeah, it's been amazing. Especially mortgage companies use it. Title companies use it as well as the general public. So it's been a benefit to all.
Yeah, so nice to have it, being effective for you. When we think about software
Yes.
wins, this is definitely.
Yes. Question? Okay, I don't see a hand from Katie either, so thank you very much.
Did that answer your question, Katie, then? Okay, super.
Yes, it did. Thanks. I just know how expensive a mailing is, so I was
Oh,
curious.
it's hugely,
how much it was. Yeah.
it's
Thanks.
hugely expensive and we have 4 mailings a year, excuse me, for notices that we send. And then we also have our foreclosure notices that we send regular and certified. So that can be a bit on the spendy side as well.
Great. Thank you.
Mhm.
It was interesting that although the electronic ones have increased, I think you said 200%. It's still only 10% of.
Overall. Mhm. Yes. And it gives our public an opportunity to come in and get a receipt and have a little chat and,
Yeah.
catch up on things. So that's kind of a nice thing that we still support.
Well, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Okay. Next presentation is by the county clerk's office.
Joe David?
Yes, Joe Davidson, sorry, assessor's office, I'm sorry. Look at the right line, Sue.
And can you all hear us okay? Are we projecting enough? Okay, thank you.
Good evening,
Good evening.
members.
Good evening, Joe.
Thank you for having me today and being here. I'm Joe Davidson, County Assessor. I've got with me Scott Branchfield, our cartographic supervisor. He's one of our section managers in the assessor's office. And I've got a lot of information here, so I apologize. I'm gonna have to kind of rush through it. Got a lot of slides to get through. So we're just gonna kind of dive right into it here. Just a basic overview of the assessor's office, as a lot of people don't know. General objective is to update and maintain property records. We assess all taxable property in Lincoln County and assist in the administration of Oregon's property tax system. We maintain roughly 57,000 property tax accounts. Those involving real property, business, personal property, manufactured structures, and utility accounts. That the utility accounts are actually appraised by the Oregon Department of Revenue, but we maintain the values on those. And obviously we calculate the actual levies for the taxing districts. We have 100 of them. As tax collector's office already mentioned, those consist of counties, cities, schools, fire, water, road, special districts, as well as urban renewal agencies. Our 3 sections, sorry, I think I skipped over. We have 20 full-time employees in our office, representing 3 different sections. Those sections are cartography, managed by Scott, as I already mentioned. Appraisal, managed by Nick Cullen, our chief appraiser. And operations and / levy, which is managed by our chief office deputy, Teresa Taylor. Unfortunately, Nick and Teresa could not join us today. So cartography consisting of 4 full-time employees. Main functions there are deed processing. All deeds that are recorded in the county clerk's office come through our office for review and processing. To update property ownership, update tax lot changes, addresses. We're also the addressing authority for Lincoln County. I think one of the only assessor's offices in the state that has that responsibility. So all properties requiring a new address in the unincorporated areas, that's our responsibility to assign those. Scott takes that function. But we also update mailing addresses for public record, as well as situs addresses that are assigned by the cities. And then we carry out mapping functions. We update the assessor tax lot maps, like the one shown here on the background. That looks familiar. Our office is the one that creates and maintains those, both the tax lot boundaries, the little ones there, as well as the taxing district boundaries that overlay these tax lots so that properties are taxed accordingly for the services they receive. So some productivity graphs here. These are the number of deeds processed over a few years. This year, 4,938 deeds were actually worked, resulting in ownership changes or tax lot changes of some sort. Of those, 6,609 ownership changes, 591 other changes. Those can include divisions of tax lots, consolidations of tax lots, lot line adjustments, code changes. You can see the big spike there in I guess 2021. That was due to the creation as well as the retirement of an urban renewal area in Lincoln City that requires code changes for all of those affected properties so that their property taxes are distributed properly to urban renewal. Addressing, obviously the bulk here is mailing address changes, close to 3,000 last year. New situs addresses assigned by the city in red, and then situs addresses assigned by our office in green. Miscellaneous tax lot changes. So, properties going from exempt status to taxable status based on ownership or applications for exemption. Those are in blue. New plats like subdivisions and partition plats that come through our office that oftentimes lead to new tax lots, which require creation of those lots, appraisal of those lots. That's in red. And then boundary changes. That's actually relating to actual taxing districts. So when properties are withdrawn or annexed into a district, that number reflects those. And then appraisal function, 10 full-time employees, including our manager there. This is the bulk of our office is in the appraisal. The main function there is valuation, both new construction and development. So all permits that come in every year that are new construction, we have to actually appraise those. And then we also carry out a kind of a maintenance function to maintain values for those properties that we haven't seen in a long time. We try to dedicate a geographic area each year and just go lot to lot, door to door, and take a full reanalysis of land and improvements for those properties. And for the years in between that physical inspection, we have to rely on kind of a mass appraisal, market trending. And so we record, process all sales that take place in the county. We do various market studies to apply trends to different market areas in the county to maintain those real market values for taxation purposes. We also facilitate in the appeals process at the local level, the Board of Property Tax Appeals, the state tax court level, both magistrate division and regular division. And there's a supervisory review process that's administered by the Oregon Department of Revenue. That's more of like a procedural dispute. That's where somebody would go to do that. And then we have appraisal staff in place to process various charitable nonprofit organization exemption programs, enterprise zone exemption programs. We have 2 farm forest appraisers that process various applications for farm forest special assessment. As far as appraisal productivity, like I said, 2 main functions there, new construction in blue and maintenance or reappraisal in red. We scaled back reappraisal, as you can see last year, and that's due to the software conversion that Amy hinted at earlier. We had to have kind of all hands on deck for that conversion process, but we're kind of back up to speed this year. The green line represents the number of appraisals that resulted in some sort of exception value. So that's in addition to the regular 3% increase due to Measure 50 in the assessed value.
Joe, if I could
Yes.
interrupt, the last chart. Am I reading it correctly that the center is that 2020?
That's 2021, 22.
Yeah, that there seems to have been a real surge in new construction, which dropped off in 2022.
Yes, I do want to note that we're still working on, well, no, I guess I can't note that. There was another slide that we were still working through 22, 23. But yes, there was a big boom in permits. We're still seeing it this year. And if you go back previous years, that trend kind of continues downward. And so we've really experienced a boom both in new construction and development as well as prices. And I'll get to a couple slides reflecting that a little bit later. Here's our appeals history.
Mm.
I'm sorry, it's cut off there. So this is the blue really represents our local level appeals, which is the bulk of our appeals workload. As you can see, yeah, this is going forward. So we're really trying to avoid appeals if at all possible, because they're time consuming, not only for the property owner, but for our office, the county clerk's office, for administering those. And so we're trying to do more informal value reviews when somebody calls and disputes their property value. A lot of times it just takes a conversation and an explanation of assessed value versus market value. So that seems to be really working with that downward trend there. This pie chart represents the current appeals, 42 at the local level. 27 of those are the value reviews, so those probably avoided an appeal right there. And then 3 at the magistrate level and 1 at the regular division of tax court. And 2 of those are actually still pending to this day. Next slide is the volume of sales that we've experienced. You can really see the housing boom that we've witnessed here over the last decade. It tended to spike in 21. And I believe the high prices were pretty much saturated the market, and the high interest rates really kind of brought those down. However, we are still experiencing increases in value. And this next slide, I just wanted to throw this in to show you really what's happened with the prices. These are actual sales prices that have come through our office, and we've taken kind of a median of those. Fair market, open market sales. We weeded out all the, between friends and relatives and off market sales. These include land, so detached single family dwellings, but we've essentially doubled in sale price over the last 5 years. From 2017, 250,000 to close to 500,000 currently. General operations. This is our third section, 5 full-time employees, including our chief office deputy, Teresa Taylor. This is where our customer service and general clerical duties is housed. They process senior disabled citizen deferral program applications. They also process disabled veteran and surviving spouse of a disabled veteran exemption program. That's a dollar amount off your assessed value for those qualifying. 860 property owners are currently utilizing that program. Manufactured home transactions. This is probably a full-time position in itself, is just dealing with manufactured home transactions. It's actually it's a separate ownership transfer process than regular deed recordings. We are contracted with the Building Codes Division of the state of Oregon. We've opted into a program to process those locally as kind of a benefit to our local homeowners. And so just this last year, we processed 500 of those mobile home transactions. A lot of paperwork involved there. And so it's a lot of clerical responsibility.
So what's responsible for all the extra paperwork in the different systems?
What's that?
What is responsible? What's causing there having to be something separate for the manufactured home transaction?
It's just a different process called the manufactured home ownership document system. And there's affidavits required. There's applications required for the title transfer. And these are specifically for like personal property mobile homes that are not detitled.
Okay.
Made part of the land specific to those, like mobile homes and parks and mobile homes that haven't been detitled. Okay, and then we have a business personal property specialist in another full-time position who maintains, last year it was 6,718 business personal property accounts. We have to, state law, we have to maintain all the business assets. And that's how many businesses we currently have on record that have personal property accounts. 1,496 of those are taxable, so there's a threshold value. And last year it was 20,000. And so if the value of that property, those assets is below 20,000, it's exempt property. Over that, and it becomes taxable. So that's how many accounts are taxable. We also administer the State Fire Patrol fee program for Oregon Department of Forestry for forest land protection. And so all the 376,593 acres in Lincoln County are identified as forest land. And we collect fees per acre on those. Last year, we generated $776,759 in fees that goes toward forest land protection. Again, I mentioned earlier, 100 taxing districts that we calculate levies for. And then general assessment administration and role certification, not only of our values, but of the taxes and levies that we then extend to the tax collector's office for collection and distribution. Okay, summary of assessed values. Sorry, I'm trying to burn through this as fast as I can. General overall countywide real market value in blue, we increased 12% from 2020 to 21. And then from 21 to 22, we increased 24% in overall real market value. So just over 18 billion this last year. But as you can see, due to limitations of Measure 50, the assessed value is pretty limited to that 3% growth besides the additions of new construction and development. And so, you know, a 3.8% increase between 20 and 21 and a 4.7% increase in assessed value between 21 and 22. And the taxes, the next slide here, the overall tax collection is pretty consistent with that growth in assessed value because they're tied together. These come right out of our website. This is something we publish each year just for general public knowledge. This is the tax dollar distribution, where the taxes go to. Next slide is who pays. As you can see, bulk of it is residential property owners, 71%. Okay, additional accomplishments for our office besides the statutory responsibilities I just outlined. We completed, as Amy already mentioned, 3.5-year conversion. It was supposed to be a 1-year conversion. It took 3.5 years to convert all of our property data, our appraisal data from one system to another. So I was the project manager on that, in addition to Jane on the tax side. And that was a big undertaking in addition to our regular full-time jobs. So that was a big accomplishment and the dust has settled. And also it came with the property info site that Amy mentioned, public access. The biggest benefit of that new public access online site, not only more data, more property data, but it's updated nightly. It used to be updated once a year. And so you can imagine ownership information, important things like that got quickly outdated as properties changed hands. So that was a big accomplishment.
And Joe,
Yes.
what was some of the pain points there that it drug out? And what were-
I think it was on the appraisal side more than tax collection side. We had a lot of property data, as you can imagine. Every property we had down to the countertops, what kind of countertops you had, what kind of flooring. And so all that needed to go somewhere. And so the system that we fed off of, Multnomah County's framework, their fields weren't the same as our fields. We actually had more data than they did. We had more details on our properties than they did. So we had to create a lot more fields, more custom fields for our appraisal data. And that seemed to be the bulk of it, along with our valuation tables.
Mm.
They're very complex. So.
And is that the same software as your appraisers are in the field then?
Yes, there's that. And I was going to get to that later for goals. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. And so in addition to that, we contracted. Now with this new system, it opens up some more doors. So now we've contracted, we've used purely ARPA funds with the help of Tim to get approval from the commission for the imaging of all of our appraisal records. So we have jackets full of appraisal information that's very valuable to a lot of people. We want to retain that, even though it has a 12-year retention, we wanted to retain that and attach it to those accounts permanently. And so we've got a vendor in place. We've got a contract in place. We just started last week. That's going to be a year process. American Rescue
Plan.
Federal funding. So that was about $100,000 project. It's fully funded. I hope so. Although that's not as pertinent as our assessment and tax systems. And then Scott has kind of led the effort on doing some in-house scanning too on our tax lot cards. That's permanent retention. Those are very important records. There's only one record of them, and they involve all handwritten tax lot changes historically. Back to that one, Scott.
Well, they started in 1961, but they have data that goes back to the 30s and 20s sometimes.
And permanent retention on that. So we want to secure those with another electronic record.
Data backed up for emergencies. There, like
So-
if there was a major tsunami or earthquake, but It's probably larger
Yeah.
than just your department.
Also got a backup database, I believe in Texas, where Tyler is based. As far as these new projects, I'm working with our IT director to have a separate kind of database. We're going to attach all these to the individual accounts in our A&T system, but then we're going to have a backup database of those same files. Just for security purposes. Locally based, yeah. The scanning that we're doing in-house is. And then Scott's also completed, his department has completed the scanning of all our historic deeds too. Those have a lot of handwritten notes about advances and then they continue to scan those as they come in. Goals moving forward, obviously remain compliant with all our statutory requirements. Recruiting, we have 2 retirements that I know of on the horizon, very veteran staff. And so we hope to fill those shoes and recruit and train the new staff. Continuing adapting to our new computer system, obviously adjusting our workflows, creating new procedures. Continue currently we're reappraising South Rural County, Alsea River Valley. And so we hope to finish that up this year and then work toward Yachats River Road and Beaver Creek. And that will complete the entire cycle. And then we're going to go back all over again. It's about a 15-year cycle, the pace that we're on currently. So we hope to finish that up by 2025 and start over again along the coastline. Complete the digitization of the tax lot cards and appraisal records, like I mentioned earlier. Configure and implement our field mobile app for appraisal that Casey asked about. So this was an app that came along with our new software for our appraisers for field collection. It's not usable in its current state because it needs a lot of configuration for our own purposes. But that is on the roadmap. Get that because that'll make field collection not reliant on paper at all. They'll all have tablets and be able to enter those electronically. We'll need to convert our mapping software. And estimated completion by that for that is 2025. The current software is going to be unsupported, so it's a change we have to make. And then Scott also just recently applied for ORMAP grant funding to assist in the funding for the cost for new aerial imagery. So that'll assist with the cost of a new flyover for aerial imagery, which our appraisers rely on a lot, especially in the rural areas. And then our budget, 20 full-time employees, currently proposing no changes to our staff. And we're at $2,201,275 for personnel services. And then 154,100 for materials and services, and no new projects or anything there. That's basically current levels adjusted for inflation, cost of living. And then the next slide kind of shows our proposal compared to previous years. The green line, I think, is the one that might require a little explanation. That's mostly our grant for assessment and tax functions. There's a state grant, and I presented to the board a few weeks ago that there's 2 funding sources behind that grant, and both of them are in decline. And so that drop there and flattening out kind of represents that we're losing roughly $115,000 than what we expected due to those reductions.
If I may interrupt, you mentioned that grant funding has been reduced from federal or from state?
So the funding sources, that's a good question. The funding sources behind the grant program, one being recording fees. So we take there's a dollar amount that comes from recording fees. And there's a percentage of delinquent property tax interest.
And that percentage is?
It is a complicated question because it fluctuates.
On the wall there.
The percentage for delinquent interest is 16%. A portion of that, there's a goal each year that the Department of Revenue sets. $13 million is their objective to reach that goes into this funding. So that, in addition to recording fees,
But the reduction, yes, it's reduction in funding. I was just interested why it has been reduced with that process.
Yes,
I think that's a vital.
So it wasn't willingly reduced.
Yes.
The- Sure.
That reduction in whether it was.
It's the funding comes from property owners, people doing transact recording fees. These are prices people pay when they buy a house or when they refinance their house. Uncollected property tax interest is taxes the property owners.
It's from us.
It's from us. And so the uncollected, for whatever reason, DOR still can't really explain why the uncollected balance that the delinquent tax interest is generated from
Mhm.
has been paid off quite a bit
Okay.
this last year. In addition to that, recording fees have dropped significantly because interest rates have increased. And so refinance activity has really decreased. Each time a refinance takes place, a recording happens. And so funding has decreased for CAFA, County Assessment Function Funding Assistance Program, by 30% this last year because of those reductions.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, thanks. Good question. And that's it, but I wanted to, sorry, I'm sure I went way over, but hopefully we have time for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Any of us have any questions? I think we queried you several times.
I was trying to follow him and I appreciate it.
Yeah. A good-
Madam Chair. Joe, once you deploy, get those tablets in the field, do you anticipate those efficiencies in any kind of context, like 10, 15% or? to-
That's a good question because we haven't been there yet. We've always relied on taking notes in the field, going back to the office and hand entering them. And so I think it would slow them down out in the field because now they're having to hand enter everything and we don't really know what that looks like yet. And so ultimately, more efficiency would mean more reappraisal, which would be great because we're at a 15-year cycle. Statutorily, we used to have to be at a 6-year cycle.
Remember that.
When everyone was taxed on real market value, it was more important to get to those properties more often. Measure 50 hit the state, a lot of appraisers were laid off because real market value, it was assumed wasn't as important, but it really is. There's a lot of things that are tied to real market value still. And so we hope that this new field mobile app will, kind of boost production out there in the field. If it does, then we hope maybe that'll cut our 15-year cycle down to 13 or 12 years. It'd be fantastic.
The potential aerial footage is something that'll aid you in appraisal and seeing things.
Yes.
And does that go into our GIS program then where we might see it too? as
That's
the general-
actually who's going to administer this grant funding that Scott applied for is just to supplement the
Mm.
cost involved with the aerial imagery, but it will be Eli and the GIS department that will
Yeah,
administer that.
So the GIS function is within your department as well, or is it separate?
That's separate. That's in Eli's department. But we work hand in hand. Our tax lot maps are kind of used as an overlay in addition to the aerial photography for our purposes, but sometimes we can't get to properties. And so we have to rely on those to measure things. Sometimes people don't want us on their property,
yes,
believe it or not.
yes.
So we rely on aerial imagery quite a bit. It's important to us.
Yeah, and in many departments as well, our GIS mapping system is just so awesome. There's so much
Right.
really data there.
Right. We
Um,
find new uses for it. It's
Oh, yeah.
weekly.
Well, great. It would be interesting to see how it all comes out and
Yeah, we really hope to
Excited
get
for
that
you.
app working.
thank you.
I see Commissioner
Oh,
Jacobson.
there's
has
a
her
hand.
Up over there.
Yeah, Commissioner Jacobson.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I have one maybe selfish ask here, but in your PowerPoint presentation, you had one particular slide. I think that you said you used all your data coming in on median prices for a home, and it showed it rising up into current levels. Could you send me that one slide or that slide in a non-PDF version? When I saw it, my heart kind of went pitter patter because that is like the most excellent grant writing fodder I have seen, but I need to be able to rip it apart out of your larger presentation. So anyways, if you could do that when you have time, that would be great.
Absolutely. We actually have that online on our
Oh, do you?
website.
Okay.
And it goes back even further. I just kind of show what the more recent numbers look like.
Better yet, just send me the link then. That would be excellent. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Make a note of that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Office. Well.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Amy Southwell, the newly elected county clerk. Dana Jenkins, our previous county clerk, was going to be here with me tonight, but he had a previous engagement. And so did my chief deputy. So I'm all alone.
Just fine.
Yeah. Yes. So we can put this up there. Okay. So I'm just going to go, the clerk's office has 3 real big budgets that we kind of deal with. Technically 4, but BOPT is kind of small. You'll see that in our slides. So the first overview I'm going to go with is elections. The key staff is myself as clerk, Janet Kaminsky as chief deputy clerk, and then we have 2 full-time employees that help us throughout the year. But when it's election time, like last night, we have 15 plus election workers that help us get all of our election done. But luckily last night was a small election, so we only had 2.
So are those volunteers or are those?
They're not volunteers. They are paid. But we don't really have that many volunteers. That's a goal that I'll be talking about to do some different things. But yeah, they have been, quite a few of them have been with Dana for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
And so again, when you have these people who work with you and trust, it's really nice to have them on your team. So the clerk's office conducts all elections held within the Lincoln County in accordance with state and federal laws and administrative rules. They provide adequate supplies and staffing to administer up to 4 county-wide elections per year. Conduct elections by mail in order to increase voter participation and reduce election costs. Work closely with the Oregon Secretary of State's office to make sure all statutes and ORSs are followed in the election process. We mail out all ballots and voters pamphlets to all qualified voters locally, overseas, and into the military. We coordinate observers for elections and staffing for pickup, counting, sorting ballots for Lincoln County elections, send all results to the Oregon Secretary of State's office on election night, publish on our own website, as well as make paper copies by 8 p.m. We use the statewide voter registration database and election management system called OCVR, or Oregon Centralized Voting Registration, to maximize efficiency statewide. This summer, the state will be updating the new statewide database, and it will be called Oregon Votes. So like Joe and the treasurers, it'll make efficiency for voters much nicer. It's going to show stuff in real time, which it's a little harder now because as things age, databases age. And so we're just very excited for it because ours is very old. I think Dana was one of the original pioneers for the online OCVR or the database, and that goes back to 91, I think. Funding sources for elections are all the election cost reimbursements from small districts and charges for printouts for elections. This averages out to be around $60,000 per year, or around 20%. The state, county, or cities do not have to pay their share of election costs. 80% comes from general fund. Next slide. So in 2022-23, election accomplishments were that we received $15,000 from the state of Oregon to update our election infrastructure, which we purchased new, more secure ballot boxes that you'll notice around the county. The nice thing about these, I will say, I actually just found this out when I went around with Dana, is each of them have a secure key, 2 different keys. They can't open different ones. We no longer, we used to lock with a padlock. It now has a slit in it that has another key that goes to it. And then when weather starts changing or the election's done, you'll notice tomorrow there'll be a slip cover that's over it that's additionally locked, and they're fireproof. Which, if anybody remembers, there was a whole big thing about worrying about people throwing fire bombs in election boxes. So that was one of the big things we did with that grant, was we got those and we were very excited about them. We also added more security technology to the election observing process per public request. We never used to have observers, and as many know who have decided to come look, which we welcome them. It's a big challenge, and so we want to make sure that their voices were being heard. Last year, we held 3 successful elections: the normal May primary, the November general, and then a special recall election in June. Next slide, please. So this slide shows our budgets going back, it's kind of small, back to 2018. As you can kind of see, if it was a little bigger, our election costs are rising, and we don't have a lot of funding for it. And we only anticipate them to continue to rise. Unfortunately, elections are a little volatile with some of the stuff that's going on. So we're trying really hard to make sure we are working with the state to find, additional funding. And then if we go to the next slide, please. And then this one is just kind of showing a little bit of what our expenses and revenue are. Oops. It's okay.
It's either cut off or.
Oh, yeah, it's sometimes that, yeah. So our expenses, they're a little more, as elections are hard because we don't get money from state, county. We rely on the small little elections like we had last night. And so that is technically smaller, but it's not increasing so much that it's a crazy amount that we'd be super worried about. And then we'll go on to the next slide. Thank you. Our future in early, well, we did receive this early 2023 an additional 5,000 from the Secretary of State. My goal is to continue updating our election infrastructure. One of my goals is to add more security cameras for clear viewing for observers. I have, if you've been up in the hall, you'll notice we don't have observers for this one because it's a nonpartisan race. And so my suggestion was, come view. We have a big monitor in the hall. We didn't have any observers this time because I think some of the parties really want to be in there, and I understand that, but it's very hectic. We have very small processing rooms. And one of our goals would also be to get more funding to help potentially get some kind of increase, whether that's going towards a new courthouse and having options to do that. One of the other thing I'm really excited about, and some other counties are doing, is I'm hoping that to put a video on our of the process, I should say, of the process from the beginning to the end, seeing every little thing we do. So doubts maybe will help. You'll always have folks out there that will have that, but it gives them maybe a little more peace saying, okay, that's what's being done. We've had many observers come and surprised. They had no idea what we did and the amount of time that we put in it. Honestly, until I was clerk, I had no idea really what we as a clerk, what you do. So for me, that's exciting. And so that's one of my big future goals. Another one is to potentially put cameras. Some of the counties around the state are putting cameras inside election boxes so that the ballots are more secure. Whether that's, an ideal thing, we're not quite sure. It's getting funding and making sure it's something that is a good thing to do for our community.
Amy,
Yeah.
so the camera in the box
Yeah.
sees the envelope drop in
Yep.
or something.
What it's supposed to do, honestly, is because of and it's not only Oregon, there's a big uproar about different
Yeah.
things, election boxes being caught on fire. It's supposed to hopefully catch people in the act of doing things that you don't want to, or we don't want them to. You hope that doesn't come to that. When I started elections, it was nothing like this. And so you have to look in the future, what are people as voters going to want and feel secure about, that we're making sure their vote is being counted. So that's just an option. It's not necessarily something. We'll just see if we can get funding for some stuff.
So.
Well, you can't have your hand. It's funny. And I will say, with these new election boxes, if you ever, when they're locked up now, but if you ever really, when you put your ballot in, look at them, it is very hard to even get your ballot kind of in there precisely. So what we've done with this last funds that we received really has helped our department. And it really, I think, has helped people understand that we are trying to protect their duty, the right to vote, and what we want to count that. So cameras, we'll see if it even has to happen, but it's one of those things that we just have to think about.
Yeah, and I think if it enlightens folks I mean, it's not like the UPS box over there where it's,
No.
should I put my?
And the old election boxes, honestly, if you remember, those things would pull out a little bit. And that's, I remember when we used to only have one pickup person. It used to be Dana would do one, I would do Talina. It is not like that anymore. We always have
Yeah.
two people. There is,
Mm.
it's very secure, very, very secure. And we've had many observers come and watch us even do that. And that's fine. I have a feeling next year in 2024, it's going to be an experience. And I was telling Dana last night, I'm very excited that my first election was nice and small, so I can get my foot
Yes.
into kind of, because I've been with him for 10 years, but you just never know what people are thinking. And, you hope they trust you, but as we see, we don't always get that.
So when the observers come, are they just right in there with everybody else, or do you have like this?
So,
room?
again, here's what the observing room, that's our
Yeah.
big thing that we would love to
Yeah.
have more funds for. I have, since I've become clerk, I've switched my office to what used to be the observing room. They used to sit two chairs in there. Very tight. Dana would be running the ballot box or the machine over here with me. And then you have the election gals behind us working the papers and security cameras. That wasn't good enough for some of them. And some of them were trying to come and be in the process, and that we want to protect people's right to vote, as well as allowing observers to see what we're doing.
Oh, it's your responsibility.
Yes, and now as clerk for me, I have goals of what I would like to do. So in this new processing area, which used to be Dana's office, there is a huge window. And I'm hoping that for next year, we've kind of been playing with it, that the table that is in this room comes up close enough. They can see closer than if they were sitting across the room. And then having new cameras down even closer, even though there is cameras in there now.
And a separation.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, when you have dedicated people who have been with you, who are not getting paid a ton to come help you do this process, and they're intimidated by how people are reacting or talking, it's a problem. So our goal is to try to figure out ways to make our employees feel secure and safe and know that they're doing their job perfectly well and fine, and making the observers happy. We'll see. We're hoping. I will say one of the other things that, like I think I had mentioned earlier, is really working to find more funding to make different projects for the clerk's office more functional, whether that is like the processing room is so big because it is so small. If you ever have been up in the clerk's office and ever want to come see, there's no room. So I think during COVID, we were down here because we couldn't, we had to have space. And then there was no observers at that time. But if you look back in our past, we never really had observers wanting to come.
Right.
And so it's something, elections is a big one for the clerk's office. It's one of our main departments, as far as also recording, as Joe was, that's where a lot of the funds come. But it's a more political thing. So we are very careful with making sure we listen to what voters would like to. Let's see here. Oh, the other thing that the clerk's office recently put in our office is a project manager. She's also / the recording supervisor. The great thing about her is there's Janet and I who, I'm clerk, Janet's chief deputy. We're constantly busy doing stuff. We are getting more and more public requests for, as I'm sure a lot of departments are, I know it's all over the state, for silly things, but there are things that people want, whether it's going back records of certain how our elections are done. A lot of time I don't have to do that. I don't have time to do that. So we were able to put this person, she was already there. So she already knows a lot about it. And so it was great for us to be able to have this addition to our team of someone also to be able to promote somebody who does an amazing job for our office that, we didn't backfill, so that's how we were able to save some money, which was nice. So a couple things, let's see. Yep. Perfect. Thank you. Some of our metrics that we want to do is working with volunteers, as you had mentioned, Susan, about just to those are non-paid positions. So helping people, we did have a volunteer in the November election, and what she did, she observed, or she kind of coordinated the observers. It didn't really help that much, unfortunately, because she would always have to come to me because I was chief deputy at that time. And so we're trying to work some of that out, and that we think with volunteers, because we'd love to have volunteers help. So that's a goal. The other thing I mentioned that is a great thing that's happening in the Secretary of State is building that new software for our centralized system. We know that's going to be another big hit to our budget, because if you look at our past budget, it's smaller because each county around the state takes a portion out and pays their own, depending on how many registered voters you have, which we have over 40,000 now. And so there's different things that are happening that we're excited that are coming down the pike, but we also know that are going to be messing with our budget a little bit. And then, as always, we are going to continue our excellent customer service and elections. So the next department is Board of Property Tax Appeals, as Joe had kind of touched on a little bit. His department and my department kind of work hand in hand with that. Again, key staff is myself, Janet Kaminsky, and she's also the BOPTA clerk. So all the customers we serve are anyone who own property in Lincoln County and file a BOPTA appeal, or have interest in it, meaning they are obligated to pay taxes on it. The Board of Property Tax Appeals, or BOPTA, as it stands, is our word for it. And that name is changing, by the way. Legislature is changing that. I'm not sure. Do you know when that's changing, Joe? It passed. Yeah. So, yeah, we don't know when, but so it's changed over the years. Still, we saw the sign that says Board of Equalization up there. So yeah, that's, yeah. Well, no, the Board of Equalization was originally before BOPTA, and then Measure 50 happened, and it was BOPTA. So
And what's it going to be now?
I don't remember. I know. I know. It was something that passed, and I haven't had a lot of time, it seems like, with this election to check on that, but I know it's changing. I think it's not happening this next year. I think it isn't it. I think it's in 2 years, Joe. Oh. Yeah. Well, that would be interesting. So the Board of the Board of Property Tax Appeals consists of 3 non-office holding residents of Lincoln County. We are really lucky when we get the same ones, but in the past few years, we've had a couple pass away. And so we've had to find, new ones that volunteer. They do not make much. They get a stipend. And so we're very, very happy when we find qualified ones, as the assessor's office. They are responsible for hearing and making a decision on taxpayer appeals filed for the reduction of real market or assessed value of their property. The board has the authority to reduce it or sustain it. Decisions are made on the same day as the hearing, and final orders are sent out by the next business day. The BOPTA clerk is responsible for notifying the petitioner of their hearing date, sending out decisions to the petitioner, the assessor's office, tax office, and the Department of Revenue. The BOPTA clerk takes minutes, coordinates training for the board members, and any other activities as needed. They also set up hearings and manage all documents presented or made for the hearing for up to 6 years. Meaning we have to retain them for that long.
Right.
No, I used to be that. I used to be a
Okay.
clerk, and now Janet is. Chief deputy usually does. I just oversee it. The Board of Property Tax Appeals operations is closely coordinated with the clerk's office, the assessor's office, and the State Department of Revenue, most of which is operated and planned by our office. Okay, so the accomplishments that we hope to do is continue our partnership with the assessor's office. We have a great relationship with them. And as you can see, appeals have gone from 1,400. When I first started, they weren't quite that high, but I remember the first time I did it, I thought I was going to cry when I saw 500 come in. And then they slowly were moving down to 60. And like Joe said, the last year we had 42, which was a huge, it's very, so, our future goals is to continue to decline those petitions, working with the assessor's office and the petitioners, because a lot of times when the petitioner comes and files with us, they haven't checked in with the person who's appraised their property. And the first thing we say, make contact with them, ask them what's going on. And sometimes there's nothing, the appraiser will say, yeah, let's go to that hearing. But we try as they do to make every goal of trying to not have to have those because they are a huge, huge time crunch.
Yeah.
We as like if there's we each have our own things we do. The assessor's office has to coordinate with their appraisers. We set up everything. We start in November and we don't end until February. So it's a big deal. And so we would all love if we didn't have very many.
Amy, has the virtual option helped that process?
Virtual option of,
virtual-
I will tell you, we have, when I did it, we were up in which is now my office, the teeny little election room, squeezed in there, the appraiser, myself, the 3 board members and the petitioner. It was very nice that when COVID hit, that we had the option to go Zoom calling or Teams, I think they're doing now. There is also some problematic petitioners that come back year after year that it's a nice way of letting them know because we have things saying because some of them won't stop talking. And although we say you have a certain amount of time, it's hard to kind of let not people want to say what they're saying. So when it gets a little too much, it's nice to have the option to say, you've said your piece, it's time for them to make a decision. Yeah. Shut up that mic. But it definitely it's a nice option. I'm sure, I think it's also nice for people who are not mobile enough to be able to come. So we have continued that. And on my opinion, we're going to continue that. If people really push to come in person, it's something I would consider. I think the assessor's office appreciates it too, because they can be in their own office in their own environment, unless they want to come down to where Janet is holding it. So, yeah. So that's our goal, is to continue to see that decline.
Yeah.
So that's just our the kind of visualization. You can see the expenses and then see that little teeny slit. That's what we get. Remember, it's very low percent. Teresa and I were talking, I don't even know if it's like 2%. It's very low. And that's what we get from the state. So it's something that it's a big expense.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next slide. So one of our last big departments is our clerk's records and administration fund. Again, I'm the clerk from that. Janet's the chief deputy, and our new recording operations supervisor, Rhonda, pretty much oversees that. She is our head recorder, was our head recorder. So we just love her being in that position. We serve any customer recording or searching documents recorded in Lincoln County, as well as anyone owning or purchasing property in Lincoln County. Title companies, law firms, interdepartment offices, we serve them all. The county clerk's office is consistent with the statutory requirements. Primary concerns will be to maintain the integrity of the recording process and the timely processing of all licenses, passport requests. Additionally, to perform administrative functions for all departments, entities, and employees within the jurisdiction of the county clerk. We examine documents for accuracy, except when properly completed, index and return all original documents presented to the county clerk's office to the appropriate place. And again, we strive to do that like daily. We don't like to keep them. If they come in the mail, obviously it goes out the next mail day. But if someone comes and with something over the counter, we try to do it right away. And luckily we have the staff right now to do that. And then we strive for higher level of efficiency, in the use of computerized recording system. Next slide. So in our accomplishments in the last year, we have been outsourcing past historical data that are on microfilm of deed records to be digitalized for the convenience of the public in county. As Joe said, those are records you never want to lose. And if you've ever done a microfilm machine, or they're dying, we can't even get them to work on them anymore. Yeah. We have one in the lobby, microfiche or whatever you want to call it. And we have a little note on it said, please check in with us because it's an antique and we can't get the parts for it anymore. And we have one newer one in the back that we use, but we will allow Scott in the assessor yard office sometime to come and mess with it too. Because you just can't do it. So we are pushing. And the goal's there, it's coming. And I'm really hoping, because that's, again, it's another big fun process that we push out there. But, you know, it's important. People want historical data. And as, you know, Joe was saying, is these are people's, if you buy a home, you want to look back at the historical data. If it's on these old documents, they don't want to be going through microfiche forever. So that's our one big goal, or that we've been doing. So future goals is to continue working on getting all the historical deed records that are on microfilm digitalized, looking into charging fees to customers for the use of the online version of deed records, as other counties have been doing. This is one we've been pushing and not doing. It's, again, we're not sure. A lot of big counties do it, and that's how they get revenue. Because it, you know, of obvious reasons of why they're doing it. And then continually, we manually add images right now of all historic recordings on our website. So we hope to continue to do that. It's a time thing for us, but when we are in a downtime, which will come after election, and as recordings, like Joe said, recordings are down right now because of interest rates. We have a project that each of them work on to get with thousands of, I mean, it's crazy. It goes back to 1893 of images on there. So people can access at home. So then we're going to go to the next slide.
Yeah, and Amy, it
Yeah.
just kind of occurred to me here that ADA access with microfilm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it's not. And so that's, Dana started this. He actually started this probably, maybe 5. He might start before I even was starting. It's a huge undertaking. So my goal is to continue his good work of doing that, because it's needed. Everybody has the right to be able to get on access. So here you can kind of see what our past revenue and expenses have been, kind of up and down. It's a little more this year, you know, again, with the recordings going down because of interest rates. We had a huge boom last year, the year before. And so not horrible, but it's, you know, at paper, everything goes up. So our budget goes up. See, is there one other slide? Yeah. So this is just our budget proposed for next year. You know, we have our revenue causes and our expenses, and that's all with our all full-time employees and our not election staff, but our ladies that we have in there. So I think that is the next one more slide. Thank you. Anybody have any questions? That's me, Janet, and that's off to the left is my chief deputy, and then off to the right is Rhonda, our new recording operations supervisor. That was when we did a thing. Well, I think what was that for the chamber last year and year before, and Casey took that picture of us. Questions?
Yeah.
Boring little elections.
I saw you perform.
Oh, yes, I can do that too. Yeah.
Any idea how many do you want to do?
You know, I will say the other thing I should mention our office does is we obviously you know, do marriage license and passports, which passports, that's the nice thing that will happen is we have a huge incline, huge. And so the revenue will be good in that next year. We see it only going up. Marriage license, people are always, you know, as far as me performing on, I don't know. Since I took office in January, I remember asking Dana, I said, over the years, how many marriage licenses or marriage ceremonies you do? He was like thousands. I'm like, I haven't done that, obviously, but no, you know, I think it's the one thing I love about my job is it's a great way to meet the community in whatever way it is, whether that's elections, recording, passports. People are excited going on to you know, so we very much love what we do in our office and just continue wanting to, as Dana said, it offer the utmost customer service. So
Well, I think you do.
yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Have a nice evening.
You too.
Okay, and then surveyor's office. Eli, Adam.
Eli's coming.
Good evening.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners, and committee members. I'm presenting here on 3 functional departments, including 2 general fund budgets and 3 non-general funds as well. The surveyor's office has many statutory duties, mostly pertaining to review of subdivisions, partition plats, and surveys, maintaining the public land survey system corners and running a research library of records going back into the 1800s.
So it seems like a lot of your departments have these fingers into this whole records bank.
Yes, and
Yeah.
I was actually going to acknowledge that our departments work closely with Jane in the tax office, Joe in the assessor's office, especially the cartography division, as well as the clerk's office for deeds, and we very much appreciate their scanning. And then they haven't presented yet, but also planning and public works, as well as people on other nights, but it's there here. Geographical information systems, more commonly called GIS, is an internal support department with a strong focus on the assessor's office, clerks, sheriffs, surveyors, and commissioners' offices, and public works, planning, legal, and other departments. We try and make all this information between the different departments available. And the aerial imagery, which you mentioned, and appreciate the assessor's office also bringing in some additional funding sources on that. More on that a little bit later. The surveyor's office reviewed and filed over 150 surveys, subdivisions, and partition plats this year. GIS provided accessible public information to 3,000 internal and external users a month. And property management started classification of the county's property inventory.
So it's my understanding that maybe the GIS availability will be, cities will have that as well. The ability to use that system, or do they already have that?
It's been available on the internet to anyone
Okay, so
who
on the
goes to the
internet.
library or has internet at home. So yeah, that's been available on the internet for
All right.
anyone who wants it. For the surveyor's office activities in the last year, as I mentioned, reviewed surveys and partitions and reviewed and checked subdivisions. We go out and inspect subdivisions as required by Oregon revised statutes, and we dutifully do it. The public land survey system, the PLSS, these are the 6-mile townships and 1-mile sections. This sort of is the grid that underlies all the deeds. And we work on that. That's Fund 217. So those activities come from a different fund. And we provide land information to residents. So you can see in the photos here, that's an old stump from the 1800s, which marks a PLSS corner location reference. Out there in the bay, that's a meander corner. That's where the GLO surveyors in the 1800s terminated that survey line. This is more corner work up above the new Highway 20 realignment. And then these are some historic records. This is what we work off of.
Madam Chair, Eli, how often do you find, or is your team going out and replacing those markers? Is it vigorous or occasional or?
Well, we're always working on it,
Mm.
but there are more corners than we can get to. So
Yeah.
they occur about every half mile.
Yeah.
And Lincoln County is 1,000 square miles.
Yeah,
And some areas they actually occur a lot more frequently than a half mile because you have to meander around rivers. There's also a lot of historic boundaries, like the Siletz Indian Reservation has had numerous boundaries, and those all have monuments various times. Next slide. This is more of our work. We use a lot of CAD, computer-aided drafting. We're often going through the woods, being able to get a straight line, and the coastal vegetation can be challenging. This is just more work. Occasionally, we get to work in some pretty beautiful spots as well. That's a condo check there with the ocean in the background. Next slide. These are some surveying on road legalizations. We do some work for the county road department, determining road locations. This is Hilltop and Grant Creek roads. This is a temporary construction easement for Cougar Creek and Buck Creek. And then that's acquiring some localized aerial imagery with a drone for the Parks Department. The GIS department activities, we support internal users and departments. We have over 100 users a day on our maps that I mentioned. It's available there on the internet. We ran 10 trainings for 50 employees from 7 departments and offices. And we do the aerial imagery processing. Recently, we've created Fund 105 that's going to enable partnering between different agencies on funding aerial imagery, because as you mentioned, the cities can benefit from these things as well, and we can share in that expense. Some of these are sort of what our work looks like. So making maps, processing data. That's our website there. Some of you may have seen it, but we don't actually spend a lot of time in GIS on the website. We spend our time there on the right, writing the code behind the website that makes it run. And a few other projects there. Next slide. Property management activities. We sell and deed properties totaling over $100,000. On a daily basis, we inventory, visit, clean up, and sell properties. That's our main activity. We work with partner agencies when appropriate for diversions. So for instance, qualifying seniors can enter a tax deferral program. And if possible, and if people qualify, we try and get them to pursue some other path other than tax foreclosure. And this work is in Fund 111. So this is a different fund as well.
So what kind of properties are you selling?
Oh, yeah, that's a lot of photos of trash. This is representative of our work. So the only properties we come into possession of are ones that people didn't pay taxes on for, 4 years, and then went through a 2-year redemption period. And we partner closely with the tax office and sheriff's office on some of these activities. But yeah, we clean them up and then auction them. This is an overview of our expenses here. I'm sure you've all looked at it in OpenGov. Here's our history. Most of our revenue comes from filing fees for filing surveys and subdivisions and condos and partition plats. All right, GIS department expenses. Our history here. Our revenues in GIS come from a portion of some of the deed recording fees. So that funds a portion of the GIS. Property management expenses. This is a separate fund, so I gave you a few different views here, including, contingency. A lot of materials and services, and a lot of this is hiring companies with excavators to pick up trash and pay the fee to haul away the trash. And this is our history on the fund. In years past, property management was a general fund function, and this has been shifted out into Fund 111. Your achievements for the surveyor's office will, of course, continue our many statutory requirements. We'll continue surveying road legalizations, improving geodetic control for the assessor's office cartography division and aerial imagery, and providing land information records to residents. In GIS, continue frequent data processing. Few of the people who presented here earlier mentioned the nightly data updates, and that's the type of stuff we do. we're also working on developing sustainable funding mechanisms and partnerships for geodata over multiple years. And we're also migrating some internal software to be more current. On property management, we continue keeping our inventory current and cleaning up and selling tax foreclosed properties, and when appropriate, transferring properties to other agencies. So some properties have, for instance, gone to Habitat for Humanity or housing from wildfire victims. Any questions?
I do want to say, I don't know if our fellow budget committee members realize, but Eli used to be the GIS analyst.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so he brings unique knowledge into the
Exactly.
surveyor. So I just think that's great. You really know the ins and outs of it, don't you?
Been working at it for a while.
Yeah.
Anyone else have questions?
No, thank you.
Formative presentation as always.
Thank you.
Our next presenters from Lincoln County Planning on UC.
Anna, the man and his music.
Lithium. Passes.
Oh, okay.
Not tonight. Didn't bring your Steinway with you.
You know, accordions are often called in the bluegrass world stomach Steinways. So I don't have that one either. So members of the committee, thank you for serving on the committee. There's no better way to understand an organization or even how a family works than to understand its budget. And I want to acknowledge that former Commissioner Hunt started, who did such a good job with us and was very interested in our budget, started off on the budget committee. And again, I think that is a path to really, that's like the chest x-ray, right? For the local government. And Susan, I know I keep wanting to calling you Madam Mayor because how long you served in local government there. So,
Uh-oh.
all right. I'd heard you were working through those family things. So again, my name is Onno Husing and I'm the director of the Planning and Development Department. And I've been in this role for 11 years. So and Susan, what you noticed by the sort of this common theme is, and it's so true, how integrated our departments are, and the expertise that it takes to be effective in any of these positions is daunting, because when it comes to hiring and retaining people, and then when you're asked to do so much, and you just hope you can, have everything in place to have quality people stay and make a career. One of the people that was here earlier and testified in front of you, Scott Branchfield, it's like, oh my God, what are we going to do when he retires? And there's been a pattern where we've been able to hire former directors and other key folks, at least on a part-time contract, to be able to pick up the phone and help people, go forward and Amy, right, with Dana. But that's sort of the larger messages that, and I think the public would be really pleased if they really understood how well we work together and how much we rely on each other, because there's so much to know and the expertise that's required to make all of this seem like a well-oiled machine, or at least not ending up in the headlines. I used to constantly, after every election, I'd say to Dana after the MT meeting, I said, congratulations on another boring election, right? Because you're not in the headlines. You're not on CNN or anything like that, which means you're quietly doing your job, right? So there are times and government very often is avoiding bad things from happening, right? So there aren't a lot of ticker tape parades for making sure something bad didn't happen. But all of us that have been in this setting understand how unbelievably important that is, that we do work together, and because we share certain departments like personnel and and IT, all these kinds of things. Yeah, so I'll talk briefly. I do not have a PowerPoint presentation, although I am inspired at some of the previous presentations that I saw. And some of the metrics that you've seen could actually help inform a PowerPoint presentation I do, like Joe, right? Because we deal with real estate just like the clerk's office and the assessor's office in particular. And all of those proxies, the number of filings, the number of recordings, the number of building permits, the number of sales, we've been terribly challenged to try to cope with what's going on out there. And before I talk briefly about my department, what's been driving this is that real estate in America, but certainly Lincoln County, has become an asset class for private equity companies and people with money. And, used to be, our department was created years ago at a certain size with a certain number of people working there to accommodate basically local traffic. These were all locals that would come in and, all right, they're going to, build a house or do something like that. And we were structured, we have approximately the same number of people that we did in a much different era, where locals could sort of come in when it was convenient for them and expect to have a quality conversation with each of us. And yes, that meant a little bit of chit chat. Now, how's your son? Or because people do, in a small town situation, right? You can't just sort of launch right into it without exchanging some pleasantries. And so that's what I mean by a quality conversation, is that people could come in, feel like they're part of a community. We all enjoy doing that. Talk about their properties, get their questions answered, and go on their way. And that's just become harder and harder to do with just the incredible volume of real estate activity that's taken place. And that's really what's driven the real estate boom. And who could have imagined during COVID that, I lost a planner and we went into a budget freeze, and I was instructed not to hire another planner because we were all just trying to understand what all this meant, right, in the early days of COVID. And oh my God, the phone just kept blowing off the hook. And because they're, with realtor.com and all these things, there are people from all over the country and all over the world constantly asking us for information. So what you heard earlier about the ARPA monies being able to, with the digitization process and the new software and everything like that, we are on the cusp of a new era in terms of a lot of our departments and how we're able to do stuff. Because again, in the old days, if you walked in and you wanted to talk about your property, or if you were a realtor and you were trying to research a property, we could go back and pull out the records and make some photocopies and people could go on their way. But when there's a thunderstorm of requests, like hail on the rooftop, it was completely untenable. And I don't know, I've never really I give my staff an A for putting up with what was an astonishingly challenging situation that we're still in now. But to have, I don't know if we reacted well enough. I appeared in front of the realtors, and I basically, about 100 of them not long ago, and I said, well, it's glad, hey, we all kind of made it through COVID, but I thanked them for their patience and understanding. And I issued a public apology. I said, I know how hard this was for all of you, because they have all these people that are trying desperately to buy property in Lincoln County from all over the place. They were running the realtors ragged as well. And then because of our septic files in Lincoln County and the unincorporated areas, having adequate staff to be able to go in and get information out of the septic files became a big choke point for the realty community, being able to, and you could feel the intensity of, and I knew but there really wasn't any way to cope with it, and I'm not sure how we would have done any of that differently. But what we've set in motion, and what you heard about several times, the digitization process, that's going to be a tremendous efficiency, because you won't have to file an information request. Someone won't have to go to a paper stack go over here and do this and do that, which worked fine for the longest time, right? But people are in the very, very, very near future are going to be able to go online and access information about properties. And that was an applause line at the realtors meeting that when I showed up there, and we were talking about, and they're all very, very thankful. But again, it was, we've been through so many changes, and in our department in particular too, we had our building official who had been there for 40 some odd years had retired suddenly. And thank God we were able to hire John Rodriguez, who is our new building official. And so while the county is going through its own tremendous transformations, and I want to acknowledge the great work Tim Johnson has done, on top of that, our own department has completely had to recalibrate what we're doing with the new building official and trying to make sure we're fully aligned with the way things need to be done in a modern era. So it's been head spinning for all of us to try to cope with all the changes. Yes.
I see that Commissioner Jacobson has her hand up, so let's give her a chance to.
I'll get to the point, right?
That was
Yes, Katie.
Well, something like that, but I guess I was going to say, I know it's been a really difficult time for planning, both with the building boom and wildfire recovery, which was an additional
Right.
homes that you had to process. And a lot of those wildfire survivors hadn't built a home before. I've not built a home before. That would be, a new process, right? Not like a builder
Yes.
who's maybe done that many times and knows those steps and those processes and that kind of stuff. And as you said, also several kind of key important positions and retirements that had to be replacing. So I guess kind of looking forward from where we've been to where we're kind of going now, it looks like from Joe's presentation that perhaps the kind of real estate boom we've been in is slightly faltering. I wouldn't say completely going back, but coming down maybe just a little bit. Does it feel like at this point in time, planning is going to have sort of the adequate resources to move forward? Are you guys planning any major changes moving forward in your structure or positions? Or do you feel like you kind of got your team in place and as things are coming down, you're going to, you've made it through?
Thank you for the question, because it really gets to the heart of the matter. I don't know, when you're in a real estate boom, you never feel like it's going to end. And when you're in the trough, you never feel like it's going to come back again. When I came back, when I joined the county, Katie and others in March of 2012, we were just coming out of the Great Recession. And we were thrilled if somebody walked in the door. It's like, oh my God, we stumbled, and really tried to do everything we could. I think even though, if you look at the long-term trajectory of our staff, there was, we basically had the same number of people for many, many years, even though the demands increased. There was a ramp up in staff that happened with the earlier real estate boom, right, where we had more planners and a tremendous amount of activity. I was on the planning commission in those days, but I was not in the planning department. And then the awful recession happened, and our department endured some brutal cuts because we are funded in a major way on revenues. And so, yes, Katie, we have to be mindful and try to understand, hey, what is the permit volume? This is from the budget presentation. I share that, this shows the number of these are building permits. It's right now still really high, that the overall permits in 2023 at 2,115. But if you look, so much of that is building and then septic, and then the planning is smaller. And the planning part takes most of the general fund, because planning applications take so much longer to develop than just issuing a building permit and stuff. So that's just the nature of it. I think we do have in place now a great team. I'm just so honored to be working with the people that we have. And I think, again, and we just finally, at long last, got a second environmental health specialist. I had the folks from our Department of Environmental Quality telling me 5 or 6 years ago, before the boom, how in the heck can you run your department with only one person that does the septic stuff? And then remember, Katie, with the vacation rental stuff, the demands on our department, because what the commissioners and the sheriff's office figured out is that in trying to fairly regulate the vacation rental industry, having occupancy caps was central to and septic systems were blowing out. So we were getting some revenue from that, but we were having to respond constantly from the realty community and others about the septic. I keep septic, right? And so, but we finally, but it took a long time to have the resources to have the second environmental health specialist be able to join our department, which is also going to allow us to capture more revenues. And the good news is that the individual we hired, Katie, is working out fantastic, right? When it's really going well, almost right away, you can tell, wow, this is a great hire. This person is really going to make a contribution to the community in our department. So I think the horses are now in the stable.
So you're
Can we
not
keep-
expecting any more, positions or changes for your budget for this year? Looking at the document I did that was posted.
No, and in fact,
It looks like it's pretty steady in terms of what you're proposing. Is that right?
I would agree with that, except I think what we've done in preparing for tonight, I've also spent a tremendous time making a second run at, we were all asked to develop budgets for this process, of course, and we did that. And I got so much help from Vanessa Howard and John Rodriguez. The three of us did it together and working with the new software. So I think we're in good shape. And I think what we have in our current budget that's before you is, it is very conservative in terms I think it understates for sure how much revenue we're going to be able to bring in. And I do want to report, like, where are we at with the real estate business, right? So much of what we're dealing with in Lincoln County is, and I've asked the realtors this, they don't see any drop off because so much of what's going on is done through cash sales. Now, I've just heard from one of my colleagues in Deschutes County that subdivisions, we kind of heard that, right? That they're sort of dropping off some of that, because I think in those situations, those people are having to borrow money to make these projects happen. So that is interest rate sensitive, but that is with this building boom and what I started the presentation, we have so many cash buyers that they don't care about the interest rates. They basically these are people that, and that's what is a change in America, is that people that have substantial resources, whether they're corporations or individuals, they're putting money in real estate. And it's been such an amazing game changer. So we're trying to keep up. But I think, Katie, with what we have, given the quality of the people that we've been able to attract and retain, I think we're in good shape. And I absolutely believe that we've been very generous in laying out in our budget what do we think it would take. But I think our revenues, our actuals for the current year are looking fantastic in terms of the volume of work that we're able to do because remember, if you have a heavy permit fee way to pay for your department, well, there's really two metrics, right? How much do you charge per permit? And how many permits are there, right? That's the fundamental arithmetic of how these numbers play out.
And is your number inflated because of price raises or because you anticipate quite a bit of?
We've had both. So we're pleasantly surprised. And oh, by the way, and again, another hats off to Tim Johnson and some of the changes with the county administrator. I have such a better idea of my budget now compared to the last 11 years that I've been here. It's like night and day. So that I think that's the other thing, Katie, I can say this with confidence in a way that I really didn't before. And maybe I'm doing a better job, but I think with the software and Vanessa Howard in our office too has done outstanding. So we're able to talk to finance and because of the new software, we really have like a minute-to-minute understanding of where we are. So, Kristen.
Yeah, I was curious, how many staff do you have? And then I also am looking at the expenses, and it looks like the projected materials and services is greater this time. I'm just curious what. But-
Yes, thank you. We have about 12 or 13 people now, up to 14
Are they
people.
all full-time or?
No, but some of that, the contractual services, yes, there's a whole, thank you for pointing that out. And that is something I needed to touch upon. We have a generous amount requested in contractual services. Part of what we have been able to have a part-time planner, Jay Senewald, and Matt Spangler, our former planning director, have been able to come in, and that their expertise and their productivity and what they add to the department is incalculable. But and so that's been great. And so, I really need another full-time planner, but with the contractual services to a skilled contract planner, that's really helping us on the planning side, keep our head above water. But one of the things that when you look at the contractual services, and yes, that's a good place to say, hey, what about that? We've also had this tremendous challenge. We lost our electrical inspector because of health reasons. They had to retire. And we have had a heck of a time trying to hire an electrician. Why? Because there's a real estate boom and they can make all this kind of money in the private sector. Now, I know some of the people in that industry like later in their careers to go into electrical inspecting because they're not carrying copper and crawling around as much as they would have to they're inspecting somebody else's work. So that's always been a dynamic. But we have had to, out of necessity, hire through a third party, and I think they've had to jack up our rates for this because they were having trouble, being able to attract people, and they're working with multiple jurisdictions. So that's been like an open chest wound for us. We're trying to make sure, and we're having to work diligently with HR and others to try to make sure that the package that people want to live here, right? As long as they can afford to. See, that's the other thing for all of us. But it's always this quandary or this conundrum of how do you find the revenue to be able to put a package together that can attract these people with these skill sets and make all of that work, So, and again, it's been so important to work with Tim and the finance and our HR department, because we keep recruiting and you get all these eyeballs on there and you get, God forbid, you actually get an interview and you say, oh my God, that person could really work out. And then they sort of look at the compensation level and go, you're a little off there.
Or really, there's no childcare.
Well, they're right.
Yeah.
And some of those things are structural, like housing costs, or it's not just Lincoln County, right? But that's the nature of a manager's, trying to make all these things happen and have a responsible budget. And, the other thing that and again, I keep singling out Tim as having been a game changer in a lot of this too, because at this point, when he came in and I was trying to get another environmental health specialist hired, right? So I was like I was the guinea pig coming out of the chute. And with his skill sets, he's looking at our budget and say, what about this? What about this? What about that? And so we've raised our fees. Our fees were behind other counties. And so with a new building official, and so but that wasn't really part of the zeitgeist around here. No one likes to raise fees. It's a difficult decision for any of our commissioners to vote for fees. But if you don't have the staff and you can't be responsive to people, and we're costing people more money by delays than whatever modest increases there are in permit fees. So that's been one of the things that we've done too, that Tim helped point out. We were also absorbing these credit card charges and with the greater transparency and the expectation and that we're going to look hard at our budget. We found some things that needed to be fixed. And I wish I'd sort of been doing that earlier. We could have had some of these fees raised earlier, but again, it's really good for an organization. We've had really great leadership here over the years, but this rebooting of who we are, and yes, it's the website, but it's all this other stuff. And the ARPA stuff came along at a great time. That was real, now we have a beautiful flat screen, web-based in our conference room, opportunity, and now we find ourselves going into the conference room more and more because all of our tools through the GIS and everything like that are available right on that screen. Every week we have code enforcement meetings and that our ability with different departments. And again, for us to be able to pull up right instead of, well, I'll get you a map or we'll talk about that next week. So a lot of this stuff has come together really quite nicely. If I can just talk about one or two, what I hope to accomplish again is to retain and work within the budget we have. But I also want to keep picking up on this theme of I want to do everything in my power to make sure that we have as little drawdown on the general fund as possible, because our general fund is, we know all these other costs are going up. And yes, these crazy housing prices, right? But because of Measure 5, we don't get all that revenue. We're kept here. And I understand that because people would be priced out of their homes if that's why Portland years ago, in effect, they started having a surge in housing in prices years ago. They were the ones that voted for Measure 5 up there because people were realizing, wow, a lot of states do that too, right? They'll have a special tax for people for their personal residence compared to other kinds of things. So I understand why we've done that, but that's the big dilemma for all of us as costs of everything, insurances, and that this is Tim's spiel, not mine. But as you start to realize how those things are doing this, and we're sort of doing that, something's got to give. And so I really feel like it's part of my job to run a department as efficiently as I can. These new technologies and these new ways of doing things are really going to help. But we just need to make sure that I'm doing everything in my power to lessen the impact on the general fund. And I know all of us are having to think about that. And the good news is about our budget, back to Katie's question, I know I'm not going to have to come back for more and we all have been encouraged over the years, including the current, to be conservative in our budgeting, which means don't undersell what you need and then have to come back later. It's you'd rather overpromise or overdeliver and underpromise, overdeliver. I always get that mixed up, but you know what I mean, right? You don't want to come back later and say, hey, I need a bunch more money, right? And that's the major message that I have for our department is every single one of the things that we've put in there, I would be astonished, especially with the latest. And again, because we have all this we can really track what's going on today compared to previous years. The headlights are on, if we hit the coffee table, it's with our knee. It's not going to be because it's dark out and we don't even see it. It's there. And this really is going to help us as we move forward. I mean, let's get through this budget, right? We have our statutory obligations to have a budget delivered by June 30th, that kind of thing, right? So we're doing that, but we're going to have to, the necessity of the way things are moving around here is that we're going to have to it's not going to be a once a year thing. We're going to have to go right back in. But at least now we have the expectations, all of us, the challenge, we've all been challenged to be doing this in real time and to be able to have right to the day exactly how much money you've collected and what your expenses and stuff. That's a beautiful thing. And I'm excited because I feel like I'm doing a better job too. These technologies and these expectations is making me a better manager. And I know a lot of the other people on the M team feel the same way.
Question?
No, Madam Chair, if I may have a question,
Please.
Going on, moving forward for the next 5 years, do you have a scale of percentage for our fees in planning? So in other words, our fees now are such.
It's planning.
Next year, our fees will be this. Next year, our fees will be this. And in 2027, our fees will go to this degree. Are we in that position at this point?
Well, when Tim arrived and created and really was as a county administrator, right? We didn't have a county administrator, right? Now we have a county administrator and My opinion, did we need a county administrator? Absolutely. Oh my God. You know, I mean, we face some challenges ahead, but if we hadn't had someone with his skill sets really asking a lot of hard questions, and our finance department's outstanding, I'm doing a better job because I'm interacting with them more too. But to answer your question, we don't have necessarily a schedule. Well, I needed to play catch up first, right? And those fees are all of these fees, right? Whether they're building department fees, on-site septic or planning, all that kind of stuff. Some of those have to be, you have to let the state know in advance, right? They have to, in effect, approve it. It has to be a public process, has to go through the commissioners. And I think, and really it's a question for the commissioners, but I was given, once we really understood, and it wasn't a great moment when I realized, wow, we've fallen behind. We need to raise our fees. Katie's and so, but I think the bottom line is we've been playing catch up to other jurisdictions. And, but the good news, as long as the volumes stay up there, plus with these contractual services, and thank you for the question, Kristen, because that's the most interesting part of our budget. If we do have a slowdown because of the contractual services, that is an immediate place we could throttle back if we had to. Do I think we will have to? No, because I think real estate is location, 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 and God Almighty, people want to be here. They're crawling over broken glass to be here. Katie Jacobson.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for the question.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I was just gonna add that while we don't have a fee schedule for where we're going in the next 5 years per se, we do raise our fees up twice a year. And we use comparable counties for all of our fees to determine structure. So we look at things like Tillamook County, Clatsop counties, which are nice comparables for us in terms of building fees and other fees. The other thing that sometimes determines fee amounts is if there's an additional fee the legislature passes that the state is collecting, that then we have to collect for them at that service. And sometimes our fee has to go up to make up for that amount that we will be losing. So I'd say we definitely don't have a scale for the next 5 years, but it is something that we are reviewing at least twice annually at this point in time, and trying to, at this point, catch up to our other neighboring counties. And we'll continue to do that as time goes on.
In the spirit of also, one last thought about all of that. I have had people in the building industry here and the real estate industry say, we need you to have the horses in the stable that you need to help, for our industry. And that's what it's heartbreaking when you realize you're beginning to inconvenience all of these other people. And trust me, we know, we love these people. We know these people. We work with these people all the time. These are not strangers to us. So that was that triple whammy. And I'm glad, Katie, you mentioned or the Echo Mountain Fire, because that was the triple whammy for us, right? COVID, real estate boom, and Echo Mountain Fire. And I'm so proud of how Lincoln County dealt with Echo Mountain Fire. But right, Katie, the demands on our staff to deal with all of those folks that, all of a sudden, they needed information and they're traumatized and our staff, how a number of our people responded, just like Katie, did such a great job in really being there for those people, because, that's not a quick conversation, right? Somebody just lost everything. And I could tell there were times where the best thing that I could do for any of them was not just make sure they get a certain piece of information, but it's just to listen, to ask them what happened that night. How you feeling? What's going on? Right, Katie? That is so important, the healing process. And I was so proud of our staff. There was one great photo of our former office manager with orange files, like she was enclosed by all these files, and she kept them like a mother hen right next to her, because every file meant a family that had gone through Echo Mountain Fire. And she was absolutely making sure that she was shepherding each one of those through the process, because it was so important to do that. So, again, I love the people I work with. I continue to be impressed with the county. We've also had some conservation victories. recently that are just starting to bear fruit and other places. I haven't even been able to talk about that, but I love what I do. It's remember Claire, Mark Labhart from Tillamook County used to always,
Remember, Mark.
oh yeah,
Very well.
and one of the great local government officials that I've had the pleasure to be around many over the years, but I always loved when Mark Labhart at every meeting, he would, when he would introduce himself to wherever he was, he goes, I have the privilege of being a Tillamook County commissioner. And that's how I feel about my job. I have the privilege to be the director of the Lincoln County Planning Department and to work with these people and to and always the constructive working through problems together. And I'm Susan, I'm so glad you picked up on that connective tissue with all of us because it's real. And it just makes me excited to be here and to continue doing what I'm doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everything.
Please.
So just shoot with me straight. Why wasn't it a PowerPoint for us tonight?
I'm not really a PowerPoint guy, but I spent many hours, I prepared. I mean, it was great to go back into the budget. But what I will happily do is, there were some great slides that I saw that some of my colleagues did. I think we should, I'll challenge our department. We'll sort of look at some of that stuff and say, yeah, let's get a couple of those things up because I think whether it's for the budget committee or not, there were some outstanding visual representations of information that I saw tonight. That's going to make me a PowerPoint guy,
Oh,
And,
yeah, I mean, we're all taking the time, right? I know your team is busy. I just wanted to try and understand it. Because you're full of a lot of information, a lot of passion, but to funnel it down into these key features would just be really useful for us.
Right. Which gets back to even the whole nature of rebooting our website was to be able to communicate with the public and helping them understand what we do and how we do it. So I'll take full responsibility for not having a PowerPoint. I was so much more focused on the re-engaging our budget, really understanding it, working with OpenGov, talking to finance, sitting down again with all of our people. I think I was more concerned with the numbers and making sure that I really understood exactly where we stood. And so we'll get something up there, but I appreciate the question. And next time I'll have one of those. I remember being asked to do that in the format and everything like that. And I was seeing that much more of these are the kinds of things we want you to cover. But I don't know if that's a satisfactory answer, but it's the best I can come up with. But we'll take some of those other slides and make sure that we put something out. Because I do know our website during COVID, when we were locked down and all of this demand for information, there wasn't a single person who finally got through to me that said, hey, I loved your website and I got a lot of stuff out of it. Right. So talk about, having to reboot and I know when we all went through what we had online, boy, that trash pile that Eli had the photograph of, that there was a bunch of stuff on our website, right? Unless you go back and refresh it. And yeah, I know enough about web. Yes, those are living things. They should be constantly combed. Do you need this on there? And pare it down so it is so much more easy for people to get. So that's one of the reasons I'm excited about but that was the interesting thing we noticed there too, is that we needed to have better, we needed to up our game. And because so many people now use the web, right? So it's a terribly effective way and there's an expectation that we should do that. So thank you for the question. We'll get something there for the budget committee and also that we would, I think that's good to have sitting in our department's website anyway, to sort of help people help tell the story. Thank you.
Okay, the next presentation is Public Works, Roy Kenyon.
They can, whether they.
Evening, Roy.
Good evening. I'm Roy Kenyon, Lincoln County Public Works Director, and this is Kelly Perry, our Parks Manager.
Hey guys, thanks for being here this evening and spending time away from your husbands and your families and your kids, and we'll keep it quick.
Right too. Yeah, hold on a second. Public Works is made up of 6 different departments. We heard from one last night. Paul Seitz gave a presentation on solid waste. That is our one-man department, and he does well by himself. There's no problems there. He does really, really good work. We have the Parks Department that Kelly is in charge of as Parks Manager. We have facilities maintenance that Jack Whaley is in charge of. We also have 3 there. It's kind of all underneath a smaller road department umbrella, but we actually have our engineering administration. We have fleet services, and we have the actual road department. So we're going to start with Kelly and her presentation for parks. We'll follow up with our facilities maintenance presentation with Jack Whaley. And then I'll finish it off with talking about the other 3 departments. Go ahead.
All right, hey guys, so I'm Kelly Perry with Parks, and we have 15 parks throughout the counties, from way up north in Lincoln City, Knight Park, all the way down south, Lindley Park, and then most of our parks are out east. And our main job is just to do the natural resources and management and maintenance of all these park facilities. Next slide, Ken. So when I got on last year, I've only been here for a year. We planted and restored 2 acres of our streams front property. So that was one of our accomplishments. And then we've had a lot of aging infrastructure. So that was one of my main jobs, is figuring out where are the leaks, where are the sewer holes, where are that. And we only have 2 staff. So this is Travis and Bill, and they are jack of all trades. They do everything from mowing lawns to fixing plumbing to fixing the roof, like in this picture. Throughout our 15 parks, we have 330 acres total. And one of our metrics from last year is I figured it out, we had over 16,000 people spend overnight in our park campgrounds. Casey Miller was one of them this last weekend. And it's an estimate for boaters, but a lot of our parks are boat ramps, and we don't have counters, but probably about 3,000 boaters, fishermen, use our parks in fishing season. This is just the majority of our budget is for personnel, that 2 staff. We have a very tiny budget. Next slide. And we do get some revenue from the campground fees, and then also our state RV park fees. And then I write grants, and our budget has been pretty flat for the last years. We're not asking for an increase. Future achievements. I want to make sure that we sustainably manage all of our natural areas. And that we diversify our park amenities. Of those 15 parks, the majority of them are boat ramps for fishermen. And there are a lot of people using our natural resources, our natural areas. They discovered in COVID, when they stayed put, that is our gold mine here. And so I'm hoping to expand our parks and for all different types of park users. And this is a picture of Brown Park. That's on the Siletz near Strome Park. And we're in the current development of that to make that an overnight campground and educational center. And that's one of the properties that we own. Last slide. This is our beautiful waterfall out at Moonshine Park. If you haven't been there, go swimming. Do you guys have any questions?
I have a question. So it sounds like you're doing a lot of maintenance stuff, but you're asking for the same budget, but costs have increased of materials and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So
making that work.
Well, so I figured it out basically. I came in and I looked at the numbers when I came in last year and said, what are we spending the majority of our staff time on? And what's nice is my guys code everything. And I was like, why are we spending all this money cutting firewood, for example, when we don't make a lot of money off that? And so I can contract, for example, a contractor to supply the wood for $3 a bundle. We sell it for $5 a bundle. My guys aren't spending 2 days of their very limited week doing that. And so now we're able to do other things. We need more money, but this is probably not the year to ask for it. Let me get my feet under myself and figure out what we want to do in our goals and accomplishment for this department, and we'll grow from there.
And what I would like to add is that, we have
Kelly and 2 full-time employees, but we also have a number of park hosts, volunteers. Kelly's been working really hard at attracting volunteers, and we love volunteers because they work cheap. And when they do volunteer for this kind of stuff, they really enjoy what they do. And so she's been working really hard on that. And so we do have a fairly large staff, but most of them are either volunteers or part-time.
Any of those volunteers help with grant writing? I mean, I think there is money available for grants for recreation and especially that you offer boat ramps for fishermen. Right, there's definitely anyway.
Yeah, and that's something I'm looking into. What was nice in my first year here, I was able to secure a grant from the Oregon Campground Opportunity Funds. And so what I'm finding is a lot of these grants have matching funds. And so I'm hoping in the future we can switch where Parks has some capital funds that we can work with, so we can match these grant funds and double our money and then make these necessary improvements for our park facilities.
Any other questions?
Katie has her hand up.
We've got a photo. Is it on the website?
Okay.
I
I was just going to add that there actually were some ARPA funds allocated to parks as well for some park development stuff for Brown and infrastructure. So that is a project that's moving forward on grant funds through ARPA.
May I proceed, Madam Chair? Kelly, can you talk a little bit about your vision for, expanding maybe a diversity in activities in parks that maybe you're excited about?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of people don't know that we have some hiking trails in our parks, but they weren't managed before me. And we're still trying to work that out on how to prune these trails and get them open for the public. But that's something I would like to expand on is connectivity of trails. Also, a water access like for canoe and kayakers. The other big one is ADA access. We don't have any places where people that have disabilities can go to access the river to fish or swim. And so just kind of thinking of all our users in Lincoln County and how we can expand that.
Yeah, it's going to be great. No other questions from you?
But yeah, I know you've got further.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So
Kelly.
Good evening, Jack Whaley, Facilities Maintenance.
Would like to start with letting everyone know that Jack did retire or moving on June 2nd this year. Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. Yeah, and we currently, his position is currently open and we are taking applications for his position.
Any volunteers?
On at a lighter pace.
Good luck.
Would you like to go with this one or would you like me to run?
Go ahead.
All right. Facilities maintenance. Jack and his group of 5 are the people behind the scenes. They're the ones who make the county really run. They're the ones who are running from building to building, putting out miniature fires. They're the ones who are at the beck and call of every other employee in Lincoln County when something doesn't go right. And in our aging infrastructure here, there's always things that don't go right. And Jack's crews are on it all the time. The programs, what they do, maintain, supply, service, and modify all existing county properties and equipment for all county facilities. And I think, I just expressed that. They also provide project management and oversight for county facilities, capital projects. And that's becoming more of a thing. When COVID hit, and then there was ARP money provided, Jack's crew was inundated with maintenance requests. And I'm not going to say they're capital projects, but they were renovations of office space. And let me back up a little bit. It started out with the whole COVID thing, and the requirements for people to continue to work in their office spaces meant that they had to be separated. There had to be shields. There had to be
how many thousands of gallons of hand sanitizer distributed. I mean, it was the whole thing. And so it was a constant go, go, go. And then when things settled down and all that was in place, all of a sudden came this flood of ARPA money. And everybody had money to improve their office space, which was a good thing. But for Jack, that just kind of ramped it up just a little bit higher. And so I give them credit for what they do because they do a great job.
And if we did our jobs right, you didn't see us, you know, that was the whole point.
Oh, next slide. Accomplishments, for this year, Walport Clinic acquisition, that was big in city of Walport. Jack's crew was instrumental in getting that building going. Jail improvement and ADA modification, you might want to speak about that.
We're currently trying to upgrade several cells in the jail to more easily facilitate folks with ADA issues. Back in 92, when it was built, the requirements weren't near as stringent, and now we're having to backfill that. We're trying to change the toilets, the bedding, everything, doorways, access to try to accommodate the newer, more stringent ADA rules, which is trying to put a new shoe on an old horse. It is really difficult. Most of it is a lot of demo and then rebuilding from the ground up. So, and that's been taking incrementally throughout the system.
We mentioned the COVID safety protocol implementation, and fortunately that has relaxed. So he's been able to focus on other things. Department metrics, facilities maintenance crew processes an average of 1,400 unscheduled work requests annually. And those come in at usually the most inopportune time when you're right in the middle of something else.
Our department's also basically the first responder for any fires, water damage, anything like that. We're always there typically before the EMS services arrive.
Facilities maintenance crew also performs approximately 1,000 preventative maintenance functions annually. So those are the things that they do when they have their spare time, is they go around and check everything, trying to.
Yeah, and that number should be more, but we've been taxed a lot lately. So that should increase if we can get a calm to appear anywhere in the storm.
Next slide. Budget capital expenditures really are zero. We really have not had any capital projects that have been taken on by facility maintenance. Materials and services are the big factor there. And then our personnel services make up about the other third of that. Next slide. The budget is kind of wherever it's at. I've heard Jack talk about it a lot, really. It's hard to maintain a budget when you don't know what's going next.
Yeah. We're very much reactionary. So if we have a good year and nothing happens, no storms, no fires, no, new disaster comes down, then that budget number can be very low. But you get one bad year and that blows it right out of the water. So.
Madam Chair, if I may ask a question, what do you guys think about asphalt for the next couple of years? Is that going to be your challenge as far as prices and those kind of things, and restructuring our roads?
Oh, so we're on the roads?
Yeah, that asphalt, and do we do all that? Do we repave and?
We have done some asphalt inlay work in the courthouse parking lot when we do that.
But you don't do much of that overall in the county?
Facilities doesn't. The roads department very much does. That's their bread and butter.
Right. We do maintain our parking lot.
That's not a question for you. I apologize.
Yeah,
No, that's
it's
fine,
all right.
but we actually.
We do a little.
We have done, through facilities, we have done asphalt inlay work in some of the alleyways out here in the courthouse parking lot. And that was roughly 4 years ago, I think we did that. And we've done work over at Commons, west of basically the Expo Hall or the.
Yeah,
but I did notice there was a pothole over there, so we need to do more of that, but.
No, I'm just curious on the input costs. for your facility and for public.
Yeah, the asphalt, the price of asphalt continues to go. Price of fuel is up a little bit, although the price of asphalt oil itself has come down. And so, it's not to the point where you can't do the work. It's just to the point where it's a little more uncomfortable than it used to be, or you just end up doing less. And kind of crossing over to the roadside, we continue to do roughly $500, $600, $700,000 worth of asphalt work every year. We're just doing a little less than what we have in the past.
Because of the cost.
Because of the cost, and it's one, transportation cost. That from the point where they're trying to crush the rock at the quarry to delivering it to the plant, to then creating the asphalt mix itself and then transporting it to the job. When diesel was $4 a gallon, that's a cost. The cost of the actual asphalt oil was up, and like I said, it has come down. And nobody really seems to know what it's going to do. But I think that right now the cost of asphalt is relatively stable. The price of fuel has come down some. But then also labor costs have gone up. And so where we used to pay just a matter of 4 or 5 years ago, we would pay on an overlay project, we'd pay roughly $82 to $86 a ton. We're now paying $100 to $110 a ton. So that's, roughly a 30% increase.
Sustainable costs.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, next slide. Future achievements. I think that Jackie can speak on this one.
Future achievements for the facilities department. We have grown since I took over the shop 18 years ago. We lived through the 2008. The shop was greatly reduced. We lost 50% of our manpower. We've since brought it up to about almost equal to what we had in 2008. But with ARPA money, with departments growing, with the rapid expansion of HHS, the facilities department now, we have almost a third more inventory since we deal basically with the buildings and all of their infrastructure. That inventory increases exponentially, and we're still trying to keep our hands on it with the same 5 guys. My department, I'm also the purchasing agent. I'm also the budgeting. I'm also my own secretary. I'm terrible at my job. Yeah, so it can get daunting. I've asked in the past for personnel increases, but we'll see how the budget plays out, whether or not that comes to fruition. But at some point it's going to have to. We just our inventory has increased dramatically. So
and what you see there also is a list of upcoming capital projects. The transit office expansion, that would be Sid Bruce's department. I think that was mentioned last night. Completion of the animal shelter relocation, that was also mentioned last night. But anything, any county facility, here comes, Jack and his crew along, whether it be during the actual to help with.
You notice we don't do any capital projects. It's because we couldn't add to our own workload. And so we use the departments to drive their own capital projects. And then once that project is implemented, my department has to come in and backfill and do the checks and do the quality control. And so it would be counterproductive for us to look for grants or try to implement any of our own capital projects.
And last is the implementation of the Commons Master Plan. So the build out of the fairgrounds. So, and Jack has done a lot more of that than he has on any of the other capital projects. He's been involved in that about waist deep the whole time. So, next slide, please.
So questions, anyone? Madam Chair, well, Jack, you're
Yes.
retiring.
Well,
Or-
changing careers.
Changing
Yes.
careers, okay. Well, thanks to the both of you. Your team is, and you just hustled so much, all this acquisition. What do you think is ideal with all of this new property and in terms of staff power for you, I mean, what is it gonna take?
Two key components would be the hiring a project manager. That would take that whole third of what we do. You know, the paperwork, the following up, the constant monitoring of the contractors, that sort of thing. That would be ideal. And then looking for good tradesmen to bring into the fold. That is another. We are trying to, right now with the kind of lack of interest in the job market, it is hard to find anybody that's willing to come in and take that starting position job. So yeah, bringing in another tradesman would be a wonderful thing. Just even one more would be
And
outstanding.
the tradesman is forgiving.
HVAC, electrician, plumber. My crew is basically, I have an example of all the trades. I have an electrician, I have a carpenter, I have an IT guru. For the HHS portion of my crew, I have this person worked in the military as a EMT, as a corpsman. So he's got medical background, so he basically speaks their language.
Yep.
You know, and that way I can coordinate with all the separate departments. Right now we have my newest employee is very young, so we're trying to train him from the bottom up, trying to see where his strengths lie, and then it would have been, you know, my goal to send that person to an appropriate, you know, training program to discover what they're good at.
Yeah.
But yeah, bringing on a tradesman would be wonderful. Yes.
Are you gonna work with this program?
We did, and we worked with the electrical apprentice program through Chemeketa College, and Mike, my second in demand, is an electrician LME through Chemeketa that the county put him through and got him his certifications. So yes, it can be done. It's a hard road because that person has to then take time to travel to take the classes and get their certifications. He's also our boiler tech. We needed that, so can't find one, build one. So we sent him 2 classes back east and got his certifications so that we had an on-hand boiler technician. So yes, we do everything we can.
Well, how about working with Angel Job Corps? Training programs.
They do. It is hard to coordinate because we are reactionary most of the time. That would be wonderful for scheduled and planned jobs, or if I did start an internal project. But for the day-to-day operation, bringing somebody in, it makes it difficult. You know, like I said, for a planned project at a specific location, great. We would absolutely love that. In fact, we've used their welders before.
Okay, I don't know how far their trainings go, but I do think they go for some certifications.
The last time I used them was through their welding program, and we had some ANC certified welders do some work out at the fairgrounds on some bleachers and some other projects. So when that specific class is being taught at the specific time, we can absolutely use them.
So artificial intelligence won't be replacing any of.
They won't be replacing us.
Okay.
We'll do a lot of the paperwork. I don't see one swinging a hammer anytime soon.
Facility.
No, if you're all good, I'll excuse myself.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, well, that leaves the road department said. Let's see what we have here as far as the presentation, so I already get started. All right, there we go. Divisions, engineering, fleet services, and road maintenance. And we do have Lincoln County Bicycle Pedestrian Committee that we normally meet quarterly. During COVID, we didn't meet at all. And now actually we've started up again. Our first meeting is in 2 weeks. And basically it's a committee put together to kind of oversee the spending of the 1% of the gas tax money that we receive. That's to go to bicycle and pedestrian projects. Also, they put together a pamphlet that's paid for by the county to show different bike routes within Lincoln County. We've worked on putting bike racks at some of the county parks. And it's, like I said, it's a small group of individuals. Right now, I think there is actually only 3 active members. But we're working on trying to get coverage throughout the county. Most of them one's in Newport, and I think the other 2 live in Lincoln City. So it would be nice at some point to get some more coverage from South County. Next slide. Accomplishments in 22-23. These are pretty boring accomplishments. They're all paving projects, but that's what we do. We overlaid roughly 2.5 miles of Server Road in Toledo. That is the main truck route into Toledo, into the paper mill. It's also got 2 schools on it, 2 school zones. On the south end of Servant Road is a heavy populated area. Turned out well. Skelton Road is a little short dead end road on the other side of Butler Bridge, right across from the paper mill. We paved about 1/4 mile of that, and that actually leads into GP's trailer and truck yard. It went from being perfectly fine to not being perfectly fine in a matter of a couple months. And John Nye Road is a tie road between Highway 20 and Uquinna Bay Road. That was a project that we actually had leftover money. Things come in cheaper. And so when we have a little leftover money, we put it on the road, and we always have. And so we went ahead and paved John Nye Road down.
It is nice.
One thing that I didn't put on there as an accomplishment in 22-23 that I probably should, and I want to mention it, is all of our departments, but primarily the road department, survived that snowstorm the end of February. And when I say survive, that's exactly what I mean. It's not so much the snow, because the snow is really beautiful and everybody loves the snow and look out the window at it, but it was the trees that were coming down. We had I would say half of Lincoln County at some point in time was stuck behind a tree somewhere.
Yeah.
And in South County, 5 Rivers Road, Buck Creek Road, it actually took our crews almost a week to get the road opened back to reach those people. And they did a yeoman's job on that. They actually kind of whittled a trail, because there was a concern of a gentleman who lived at the back end of Buck Creek Road, and they wanted to do a welfare check, but nobody could get back there. And so we had a recon crew go out and whittle a trail, and then we came back later and opened it up. And so I want to give the crew credit for that. And that was more of a survival job, because we're still in the cleanup mode, and we will be probably for the next year. Unfortunately, as far as our budget goes, snow's cheap. Cleaning up trees is really cheap. I'd rather have a really bad snowstorm than have one of those high flow events where we get 6 to 8 inches of rain dumped on us all of a sudden, and I lose a bunch of roads. Those are really expensive, and hopefully we're out of that. Next slide. There is our budget, and that budget represents all 3 departments. As you notice, we have an unappropriated of 7.5 million. That is our reserve. And that is something that I hold very close to me, and I protect it with every ounce of energy that I can. It was something that in kind of the heyday of the road department, when they were actually harvesting federal timber and we were getting federal receipts from that, we were getting $3 to $4 million a year revenue just from that source. And my predecessor, Jim Beisman, had the foresight to actually budget every year, put a little in reserve and put a little in reserve, knowing full well that that wasn't going to last forever. And so when I took over for Jim, during the interview, there were a lot of questions asked about that reserve and our budget and how did I view it. Well, because I grew up in the department, I've been employed at Lincoln County almost my entire adult life. I hung on to that, and it still exists. And so it makes our budget look a little overinflated, because that 7.5 million carries over year after year. But knowing that we have that is very, it allows me to sleep at night, because I know that if something happens.
Yeah, well, I want to let you finish your sentence, but just an observation.
If something happens and we do have a bad year or a shortfall, the unimaginable happens, we do have that to fall back on, and that's what it's there for.
Well, like one example that comes to mind, Roy, one of the, I think what, in 3 years' time or 4 years' time, we had 3 significant flood episodes in the 90s. And I remember Jim telling me after one of them, because he was sitting on that cash reserve, he was able, and we were hit pretty hard that year, and basically on handshake deals, commit 7 figures to repair projects within a matter of days. And if I recall correctly, he said, well, one of our neighbors to the north, meanwhile, was left with nothing in the bank. And so literally then having to go out and obtain bank financing to get their repairs
Yeah, that was
started.
February 6, 1996.
You remember it well. You remember it better than I do. That
That was-
doesn't surprise me.
It was there.
And
Yeah.
these are
I know.
ONC land payments? Is that what you're referring to?
Not just ONC.
No, just don't see. Basically, the payments you mean that went away?
Well, yeah. Is
Basic.
there-
Well, that reserve isn't it just specifically that, but basically it was because we were having such a inflow of funds.
Yeah.
We were able to set aside some. And that was back when the road department had twice as many people as we have now. And so we did twice as much work. Since then, we've had a downsize. 2007, 2008, 2009 hit us pretty hard, but we're at a level that we can maintain. We don't really improve roads anymore, seems like. I think we just maintain what we have, or we attempt to maintain what we have, but we're stable there. We have stable amount of personnel. For now, we have a stable budget. Tim mentioned last night in his presentation that, like with SRS, with the Secure Road Schools, there is a chance. But there's always a chance. I mean, we've gone through this last minute renewal for a long time, and we're still kind of in that last minute renewal. But it's one of those things that if it wasn't to be renewed, I can cut $1 million out of the budget pretty quickly by not doing those paving projects, or by not doing some kind of an improvement project, and just holding status quo and maintaining what we have. And so we've done that multiple times. All right, next
All
slide.
right.
But that then eventually comes back to bite us too with
Always.
deferred maintenance.
It always does.
Yeah.
But basically the expectations of the public and our own expectations have to drop a bit. And I think it's harder on our crew than it is on the public, actually, because they understand, they can see it. They understand what we used to do 10, 15, 20 years ago, we don't do anymore. And they can, because we have a history of longevity with our department. And for somebody to stay with us for 25, 30 years, those are, that's normal. Anybody that only works for us 10 years, they barely got started. And so they see this kind of this decline, but like I said, we're doing the best we can with what we have. So as you can see, our revenue every year way outweighs our expenses, but that's that money that we're continuing to carry forward. Basically our revenue and our expenses went up a little bit the last year or two, and that's because I've been packing about almost $1.5 million of ARPA money. It's for a single project. It's for a culvert replacement on Cooper Creek, which is Duck Creek Road, which is off of Five Rivers Road, which is off of Highway 34. And that's a one-time expense, and then that goes away. Those numbers will drop down to where they've been for the last couple of years. And that project is taking a fish passage problem and making it passable. So it's an environmental friendly project. It's fish friendly. It's going to open up another couple miles of stream. We're working in conjunction with Forest Service and with Mid-Coast Watershed Council and ODF&W and a lot of other agencies. And this is all a good thing. So next slide. Future achievements. We're paving Logson Road this year. We're going to be going out to bid here in a couple weeks. Cougar Creek culvert replacement. That's the project I talked about. That's going to be coming up this summer. Lincoln County fueling facility renovation. That's actually a project that is being paid for by some grant money from Transit. We're going to redo our fuel pumps and our DEF tank, the diesel exhaust fuel. It basically helps those engines burn cleaner. Replacement of the South Fork Beaver Creek Bridge #2. That project is actually in the engineering phase right now. The construction is right now scheduled to be in 24. And so I threw that in there, but really that'll be something that the next person will be talking about next year, because I also am going to be retiring in September, after 35.5 years. Yeah, we won't talk there. I'll start crying.
Not even gonna mention that our fleet manager is retiring too.
Him tomorrow. But he's a new guy. He's only been here like 14 years.
On the block.
And longitudinal striping project, that sounds really neat, but all that is we're gonna be painting lines. And going forward in the future, not in this budget cycle and maybe not even in the next budget cycle, but we've been approved for 2 other bridge replacement projects. And one is on Crowley Creek, which is almost a night park on Buff Road, and one is #2 bridge on North Beaver Creek. And these are ODOT delivered projects, and basically the federal money comes in from the infrastructure bill, funnels through ODOT. They help us select bridge projects. And then because we're such a small county, they actually deliver them for us. We participate in the process, but they're really driving the bus on that. And what we owe on these is 10.27%. So it's match. You can't beat the deal. So we got one construction in 24, the other 2 probably in construction in, well, hard to say, but 25 or 26. So those will be in the budget in a couple of years. So next slide. Questions?
A lot of material, a lot of work.
Questions and answers.
And answers, yes, of course.
And no questions, Madam Chair.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Even though we're losing a lot of experience, a lot of leadership, I'm convinced that Roy has put in place a team that will, and policies, procedures, and the right kind of people that we won't lose a step. Well, maybe half a step, but basically, basically we'll gain a step. Okay.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, it has.
Thank you.
Okay, overall committee questions. We questioned out.
I am for tonight at least, but wait. Right.
Tim, are you coming up under 9 or just closing us out?
I'm closing you out. Yeah,
Okay.
we're gonna get out of here before 9.
You have questions for the public. Is
Yes,
that okay?
that's okay. Take those public questions.
Katie, are you still with us?
Did she have her hand up?
I just wanted to.
No, I'm here. No questions for me. I'm still here. I'm still with you.
Okay.
Questions from the public?
Nobody online.
Okay, I guess we're ready for you to close us out.
Thank you very much. Appreciate a little bit longer evening tonight, but some very good information was provided to you. So I want to thank all of you for your quick response. We'll be meeting based upon the survey on June the 1st with you with our final balanced revised budget information. I will be meeting with the management team earlier in the week. So we will have those options moving forward and hopefully have that sent on with your recommendation and on to approval with the Board of Commissioners on time and on schedule. Thank you again. If there's any questions I can answer for you, I'll take those now.
So tomorrow,
Oh, yeah. So tomorrow, this is big guns show up tomorrow night. So you have the Board of Commissioners budget presentation. You have the county administrator's budget presentation, along with a variety of other funds associated with that, such as the veterans offices for the county. We'll also be talking we won't be talking capital improvements. We're going to move capital improvement budget to the 25th because there's it's going to take longer, and I think you deserve the right to hear all of the different components that are going on, from the commons to the animal shelter and a couple other items and projects that we're working on. I know this sounds, it is fun stuff, and I recognize that it also, from an optic, is also a little peculiar because we're having this issue associated with balancing our budget, associated with these increased costs that we talked about. But on the other side of the coin, we're having these capital improvement projects, and I have to always tell people, in counties, it's about the color of money. And that's the easiest way I can explain it to you, because having both worked in a city manager's office and a county administrator there, these budgets are devised completely different. In we are an extension in some ways as a county of state government as well as federal government, and we have obligations that we have to take on that cities don't have. Also, the way that we go about taxing is different than the way that the cities have the ability to raise taxes. So it's a different experience. We won't bog you down with that, but tomorrow night ought to be a very interesting evening for you.
Thank you.
Okay. And
Thanks, everyone, for sticking in there.
I've got a process or procedural question. Tonight's agenda said reappointment of compensation committee, which we did, but we did not formally receive the compensation committee recommendation. Have we got that rescheduled for another night?
Again, that will come at the end of the hearing process, and we'll make sure that that's taken care of.
Okay.
Okay.
Want to make sure.
You bet.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.